Green Powers Alta Farms Wind Project, Baum Chevy Buick, Clinton Athletic Boosters, Clinton Community YMCA, Covenant Animal Clinic, Liberty Village, Midstate Eye, Nan Krang with Remax Choice, your 217 home team, Warner Hospital and Health Services, and ServPro of Piatt DeWitt counties.
Your friend in Central Illinois. WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show is streaming to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. My guest on this segment of the morning show is Mr. Fred Lamkey, Superintendent of Mount Pulaski Schools. Good morning, Mr. Lamkey. First of all, thank you so much for making time for us in the middle of your summer. Appreciate that as always. How you doing?
Hey, we're doing great, Seth. I'm glad to be on the show again. And, hey, my summer, these are just another work day, Seth, so I'm happy to be a part of it and spread a little information out about Mount Pulaski.
Sure. Well, we'll get into what's happening in the summer at Mount Pulaski. But, Mr. Lamkey, it's not been very long since you and I caught up. But in that time, of course, we saw the tragic school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. And, from your perspective, when you see things like that, what goes through your mind? What's your reaction? What's your thought process? Do you mind sharing that with us to start us out this morning?
Well, the absolute first thing that goes through my mind is that I hope that we never live through a day like what they lived through there in Texas. It's just heart-wrenching when you think about it, and as much control as we try to have over our student security and keeping people safe, to realize it just takes one person to completely thwart that. It's disheartening. It's hard to accept. But we try and do everything we can in our schools and moving forward to try and make sure our students are safe. I mean, things like that trigger us to go question, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And to look at our buildings and to make sure they're secure. So, it's definitely thought-provoking when those things happen.
Yeah, for sure. Well, when it comes to, school security, I venture a guess an event like that, you're going to be waiting for details, and you're going to be looking at, analysis of what happened, what was the response like, what were the protocols in place, what were the, what was security like in place, and those sorts of things. How quickly, how much do you wait on that before you start thinking about what's in place in your district and evaluating your processes, Mr. Lamkey? How about that?
Well, we're ongoing doing that. We're always looking at our processes. Every year we have a meeting with the Logan County Sheriff's Office and our local police department here in Mount Pulaski to sit down and look at our plan. And Logan County has a comprehensive plan for school districts and how to respond in these situations and how to plan for them. So every year we're looking at those things. Last year, we hired Logan County Sheriff to be in our buildings as an SRO officer, and that gives us constant contact with them. They're always in our building. They're working with our kids. There's a presence on our campus, and then there's a constant presence with the Mount Pulaski Police Department. We've been very fortunate just to have a really strong relationship with those two groups, and their presence in our building on any given day. When you pull up to our schools, there's a good chance that you're going to see either Mount Pulaski Police or the Logan County Sheriff sitting in front of our building.
How far does that go, you think, having that law enforcement presence there, that school resource officer presence there? How far do you think that goes in maintaining a safe school environment?
Well, because we don't maintain just a solid schedule of when they're there and when they're not there, I think it creates that question in anybody's mind that I'm not going to go look for trouble when I know there's somebody there that could stop it, because usually people that are doing these things are looking for weak points or looking for places that they know they're going to have success at whatever it is they call success. And I think just the presence of it is a deterrent by itself. I think the bigger piece of it is the relationships that get created and forged through our students and our staff, that you're talking every single day to a county sheriff. And when you're talking every single day, if there's something on your mind or there's a concern in the air, our county sheriff gets to hear a lot of things in the building, just like our Mount Pulaski police do. And it puts them in the presence of adults, teachers who may hear things that they'll have casual conversations about. So I just think it opens up the door for us to stay on top of concerning things in our community.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to school security and those sorts of things, Mr. Lamkey. Anything else just in terms of, what you're doing, how often you're looking at this? I'm sure it's going to, like I said, I'm sure when events like these happen, that conversation gets ramped up a little bit. You take it a little bit more, not that you don't take it seriously. Otherwise, I shouldn't say it this way, but those conversations have a bit more urgency, I guess I'll say. How about anything along the lines of just in general things you're kind of always evaluating? Anything on that we didn't touch on you want to put out there? Because I know there's other things happening, kind of imminently within your district that you're going to have to worry about. But how about that first?
Yeah, when we built the new high school, we put in a state-of-the-art security system with cameras and entries, limited access entries into our building, and cameras at every door, so there's entry that we can see people coming in, and those things that were really great. And then after 1 year, we looked and said, hey, we got some spots we want cameras. And when we started looking to put those cameras in, we discovered that Hikvision, a company from China, their sales of an update of anything in the United States is being prohibited. The United States government has ceased any trade relations with them because of their past human rights things that they've done, and also because there's some spyware things that they're concerned about. So all federal government, state governments have to now remove this. So we put a brand new system in our high school that we now have to remove. We're fortunate that we have some ESSER money, and also we're looking for grants to take care of that. But that's a process that we're going to start this summer. And in doing that process too, we're also upgrading the security and surveillance systems at our grade school. And you're right, Seth, it's not that we ever take it lightly, but when something like that happens in Texas, it just really brings it to the forefront. You're like, we can't wait till tomorrow to make things stronger or better. We need to do it today. So this summer, we're going to be spending some money to put an upgraded surveillance system in our buildings too, that's going to have limited access into the building and give us better eyes on our perimeter. Those are things that I think we just have to constantly stay on top of as technology gets better and better.
Yeah, for sure. So when it comes to replacing those, you mentioned, I think the end of the year, you have to have that done. If you were just to replace your security system, without a mandate in front of you, what would that process look like? Does this expedite things? Are you going to have to work swiftly? What does that process look like, Mr. Lamkey?
Well, at this last board meeting, we just approved the putting the surveillance systems in both buildings. And the process pretty much comes down to that we could have maintained our current systems longer, but we couldn't have service on it and we couldn't replace them. So we didn't want to put ourselves in a spot that we had a system that was faulty and was unreliable. So we wanted to be proactive rather than reactive afterwards. And doing that, we hope to have it all completed before school starts in August. And I know that we're working with Thompson Electric. They're going to be out here to get that stuff done and get into our buildings and start that process as soon as possible. So it is a process, and we're also limited because we want to make sure that the systems that we have at the high school and the systems at the grade school are similar, so that when we're having work done, we're not going through two different companies, two different systems. So keeping that consistency, I think, is very important too in maintaining your surveillance program.
Sure. Fred Lamkey, Superintendent of Mount Pulaski Schools, my guest on the phone. Mr. Lamkey, anything else on school security that we haven't touched on, just in general, with this replacement system you're going to have to seek out? Anything that we didn't touch on you want to make sure we know about?
No, I'm just very grateful. We're renewing our agreement for a school resource officer with Logan County again this year, and we'll do that at the July board meeting. And for me, that's probably one of the single greatest things we do. And again, the chances of something happening in Mount Pulaski are not great, but we want to be prepared if they do. But more so, it's a relationship that we're creating with our local police departments, for our students, for our teachers in our community. I think that's probably the most valuable thing we get out of all of this.
Again, Fred Lamkey, Superintendent of Mount Pulaski Schools, my guest on the phone this morning. Mr. Lamkey, let's talk about the expansion of dual credit courses in your district and the things happening there. What's first of all, give us a little history on where we're, what's gone on, where we're at, and what's to come. How about some of this?
When I came to Mount Pulaski 3 years ago, primarily we worked solely through Lincoln College to try and provide dual credit opportunities. And we did that on our campus, but I think at the time I came here in 2019, we had one dual credit class that we were able to offer. And one of the things the Board of Education put in front of me, said, we want more dual credit opportunities for our kids. And that was a daunting task at that point in time, because it's not easy to get students or get teachers certified to be able to do dual credit classes. And then universities have to sponsor that teacher to say, okay, we will accept the credit that comes out of your classes. And that's tough to do. But over the past year, we've been very fortunate in our hires and bringing some different things into the school, where now we're going to be offering 4 dual credit classes in-house next year, where previously we only had 1. And when you look at that, that's an opportunity for our students to get 12 hours of college credit under their belt before they ever leave our building. And that's 1 semester of classes that they are not paying for, at least full college tuition. So that's a real positive thing. We're looking at some other options as well. And as we move forward, we believe next year we could double that number up to 8 dual credit classes being housed in Mount Pulaski. And there's also opportunities. We partner with Lincoln Land, previously with the Lincoln College, to offer off-campus opportunities too, in areas for like psychology, where we don't house a teacher for that we couldn't teach that, or a speech for college credit. It's a very difficult one to get a teacher certified for in your building. So our kids, by the time they leave here, they very well could have their first year of college almost out of the way by the time they graduate.
Yeah, for sure. And this is a growing opportunity in school districts around the area. Looking ahead, Mr. Lamkey, there's a lot of districts where there's a community group. Maybe there's a fundraising arm of some sort that really puts in a lot of work to make this opportunity affordable for students. How affordable is it now? What does that look like going forward, do you think?
Well, at Mount Pulaski, any classes the students take at school, they're free classes. They're offered by our school. They're given an opportunity. You just get to put dual credit with that. So from that perspective, it's very affordable. Now, any classes they take away from school, where they're using like an instructor from Lincoln Land or Milliken or wherever it might be, the students are responsible for paying that tuition into those classes. We offer the opportunity and the space to do it. But they end up paying for that out of their pocket. So there's been nothing in Mount Pulaski district where the community looking to raise money or doing any work to pay for those things. It tends just to be a few individual students that are looking for different opportunities.
I guess, okay, I got you. I guess I didn't realize. So is the school, like, do the teachers, do they have to take, or do they have to have a certain education level to lead those classes? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, in general, in most situations, they need a master's degree to even be considered. And then they have to have their accreditation taken to the college, and the college has to choose whether they're acceptable or not acceptable to be in their program. And as I said, right now, we have science, math, English language arts, and our ag program all have classes and coursework that are accepted for dual credit. Then moving forward, we're going to increase the classes in our district offerings from those areas. It's going to increase the number of things we have. But there's also a situation for students in tech areas like consumer family sciences and accounting, where you don't have to have a master's degree in it. And we're working with Lincoln Land to try and get dual credit, our teachers dual credit certified in those areas too. So we're getting additional chances to get some college credit coming out of it as well. So
gotcha.
Yeah, it's varying what you need to have depending on what subject area you teach.
Sure. Very good. Well, Mr. Lamkey, anything else on dual credit you want to put out there before we go to break this morning, sir?
No, just two things coming out of that is that one, even the online classes that our students are having a chance to take are very important, because I graduated 2 daughters from college, and there's a good portion of their coursework that was offered online. Despite the pandemic, it's just where the offerings are. So the more vast experiences we get our students at Mount Pulaski, I think the more prepared they are to get out there and see what they can do in college in the real world.
Fred Lamkey, Superintendent of Mount Pulaski Schools, is our guest on the phone for this morning, streaming to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. More to come on the morning show.
WHOW.org.
Let's check the markets now on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Jim Taylor. Corn, beans, and wheat all trading double-digit lower. July corn 7.46 1/4, down 21 3/4. September corn down 31 6.71. December new crop 6.60 3/4, down 33. July beans 16.04 down 48 and 3/4. August beans down 47.5, 15, 16.5. November new crop 14.28.5 down 48. July wheat 9.52.5 down 24. September wheat down 24, 9.64 and 3/4. July bean meal 424.60 down 7.80. July bean oil 69.95 down $1.01. In the livestock market, June live cattle 136.37 up 1/4. August feeders up 177, 174.92. July lean hogs 110.55 down $1.30. The energy market, August Brent crude oil down 34 cents, 111.40. I'm Jim Taylor for the RFD Radio.
Having a hard time finding the correct new car, truck, SUV, or crossover to fit your needs? This is Scott Baum from Bob Chevrolet Buick here in Clinton. Some lots look low on inventory, so go to our website, look at our pre-order and reserve tab. You'll see inventory in transit, which are built and on their way to Clinton, and in production, new Chevys and Buicks, which are being built and will arrive soon. Or you can always call our sales team. They can help you find the correct one just for you. BombChevyBuick.com, right from the start.
DeWittDailyNews.com is the area's leading local news source 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Get the latest local news, obituaries, police splatter, weather forecast, and more with no paywall. Head to DeWittDailyNews.com to get the local information you need to know.
For the latest in Central Illinois agricultural news, visit IllinoisFarmRadio.com. Get updated information on markets, weather, ag news, local interviews with NAFB farm broadcaster Jared White, and much, much more. All at IllinoisFarmRadio.com.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Once again, good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. My guest on the phone is Mr. Fred Lamkey, superintendent of Mount Pulaski Schools. Mr. Lamkey, recap the 2021-22 school year from your perspective. A lot of ups and downs. How did things go in Mount Pulaski?
Things went extremely well. Obviously, much better than the previous year when we were really handcuffed by the pandemic. And I think in some parts it feels like almost like it was a normal year. But when you take a step back, it really didn't get very normal until after February. Then it started really feeling normal. But our teachers, our students, our community were very supportive. It was a time when people were split on politics and policies and things that we were trying to get done, but it didn't hurt our spirit at all in Mount Pulaski. The folks here in Southern Logan County, we did a great job holding together, and our students finished very strong. Our teachers in good spirits, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and we're excited about getting to it.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to Mr. Lamkey, being a smaller district, sometimes that has its negative connotations. But I would think, when you talk about academic progress of students and you hear about learning loss and you hear about students kind of falling off the grid in bigger places and things of that nature, Mount Pulaski schools, there's probably a lot of accountability. There's probably a lot of access to help and things of that nature. How about the academic progress of your students as it relates to COVID and, the ups and downs that COVID provided through education? Where would you say your students are at? How are they doing?
I think when you look across the state and even the United States, our students are faring very well. It's not to say there's not some loss, because anytime you take a student out of their normal day and their normal way they're used to learning, you're slowing things up, especially that last semester of the 2019-2020 school year, when that last quarter of the year that we weren't in person at all and we weren't really prepared to do remote instruction. I think to me that was probably our biggest dip, but our teachers did a great job getting on board and moving forward so that the remote instruction we did could be as comprehensive as possible. And then also just that we did get the students back in school half a day for that first semester. We did get them going through the rigors, and I thought we did a really nice job with that. But to think there wasn't some type of loss in the last couple of years, I think that'd be assuming too much. But again, we've been working very hard. This year was much more normal. We're full day all year this year. It felt much more normal, and I think our students are making some progress forward. But you can see in our test scores that there's been some hills and valleys for our students. But right now, I'd say they're ascending up to the top of the hill.
Yeah, and I know you were telling me in the break there's some programs and some things you're trying to put in place that address the deficiencies of students and their academics. We'll talk about that maybe as we get into the new school year next year, Mr. Lamkey. But how about, by the way, anything else on the school year itself? Students from an emotional wellness perspective. I know that I talked to our Piatt County mental health professional here the last week or so. He's really interested in some student data that they have gotten and kind of the impacts of COVID and mental and emotional wellness in students. How about that aspect of where your kids are at, you think?
Well, we weren't we didn't know what to expect coming into the school year because of the past year and a half of the pandemic when our students were so isolated. And we were very, very pleasantly surprised that we didn't have a lot of issues. It was really a pretty normal year. We were proactive in that we started a program called Capturing Kids' Hearts that was really a training for our teachers and how to deal with students and how to work with them. And I think it made us a little more understanding about what the students might be going through. We continue that program through this year. It's a training that we're constantly getting new training on it and moving forward. I know Lincoln District 27 is being trained on Capturing Kids' Hearts this year as well. So as far as social emotional, and that was one big step we did. But the other piece was just really having kids on our radar, looking for kids that were struggling, not waiting for something bad to happen, but trying to catch it before it did happen. And I really want to say is like everything else that went last year, we finished the year very strong, and I think our students finished in a good place.
Well, Mr. Lamkey, I apologize. I've left us only a minute here. So how about the next school year? What are you anticipating? What do you think about the year to come? What's on your mind there?
Well, just kind of setting the table for our next conversation. Our big focus going into the next year is using the data assessments that we currently have. We haven't done a great job using that data to find out what our student needs are. So we're really trying to learn how to use our data this summer, attending some professional development, doing some different things so that we can really address specific deficiencies in our students and really work on trying to fill those gaps and maybe take care of some of that learning loss taking place and keep pulling them forward. So that's a little trailer for what we're looking on next year, what our teachers are going to have a focus on.
Yeah, let's dive into that maybe when we connect in August. Mr. Lamkey, enjoy your summer, sir. Thank you as always for your time. I know it's been a busy couple of years. You have been so generous giving us the time that you do, and we appreciate it as always. We'll talk with you soon.
Hey, I appreciate the format to do it, Seth. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
That's Fred Lamkey, Superintendent of Mount Pulaski Schools, my guest on the phone. Network News on the way.
The Big 1520 WHOW Clinton, 92.3 FM W222 BG Clinton, 106.5 FM W293 DJ Normal Bloomington.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. A Second Amendment victory at the U.S. Supreme Court. In a 6-3 ruling, the justices have found that a New York law restricting the ability of a law-abiding citizen to obtain a concealed carry license violates the Constitution. The New York law required concealed carry applicants to provide a compelling reason for needing the permit. Soft landing for the beleaguered economy. The Fed chairman says it would be very challenging. Jerome Powell not ruling out a recession, even though the central bank is trying to prevent one.
In recent days, President Biden and his administration have emphasized that a recession is not inevitable. The Fed chairman took a similar message to Capitol Hill, where he faced skeptical lawmakers. Powell acknowledged that a recession is possible as the Fed pushes interest rates higher. But he said the goal is to achieve a soft landing, a reduction in inflation and a slowdown in growth without triggering a recession and high unemployment. Greg Clugston, the White House.
President Biden asking Congress to approve a 3-month federal gas tax holiday, but Moody's Analytics chief economist Mark Zandi says it would have only a modest impact on prices at the pump.
The gas tax is really on the margin. I mean, it's small, a little over 18 cents per gallon. Remember, gasoline is now selling for $5 a gallon. And the other thing to consider is that some of that cut in tax will probably be captured by the gas company, the gasoline company. They're not going to pass all of that through to their customers.
AAA's national average for a gallon of regular is a bit lower this morning. It stands at $4.94 a gallon. The Uvalde, Texas School District Police Chief has been placed on administrative leave. This as an investigation of the school massacre continues. Wall Street, the Dow's up 167, the NASDAQ 146 points higher. More on these stories at townhall.com.
First, we decide where we want to go. Then we need to know the best way to get there. Hi, my name is Adam Barada. I'm the owner of Advantage Gold. We're the highest rated precious metals firm in the country. We teach people how to own physical gold and silver. Now, we've won the Best of TrustLink Award 4 years in a row because we educate our clients on how to buy gold and silver the right way. We don't pay celebrity spokespeople millions of dollars. We'd rather pass that value on to you. Call 800-900-8000 and speak with one of our experts. We'll send you a free gold kit along with my latest #1 national best-selling book, The Great Devaluation. Call 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000. Get the best information, the best process, the best service, the best value. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000.
Russia now focusing its firepower on 2 villages in eastern Ukraine.
Britain and Ukrainian military officials say Russia has expanded its grab of territory in the east, capturing 2 villages and vying for control of a key highway in an offensive that could cut supply lines and encircle some frontline Ukrainian forces. In addition, Russian forces are trying to capture areas outside Severodonetsk, the administrative center of the Luhansk region. Now, Ukrainian forces have withdrawn from some of the areas near the city of Lysychansk to avoid the possibility of being encircled. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
A man wounded 4 people in a stabbing spree in Auckland, New Zealand. He was stopped by bystanders who wrestled him to the ground. Police say the attack was random. The suspect is in police custody. Breaking news and analysis at townhall.com. Republicans have a chance to flip a couple of congressional seats in Virginia.
Virginia voters have picked a state senator and a law enforcement official as the Republican nominees for what could be 2 of the country's most competitive U.S. House races. Jen Kiggins defeated 3 challengers to win the nomination in Virginia's coastal 2nd District and will take on U.S. Congresswoman Elaine Luria. And Yesley Vega, an auxiliary deputy and county-level elected official, prevailed in a crowded field in the Central Virginia 7th District. Vega will face Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger in the general election, where Republicans are bullish about their chances of flipping the seats currently held by the 2 centrist Democrats. Keith Peters reporting.
And recapping the hour's top story, the Supreme Court, in a 6-3 vote, has struck down a restrictive New York gun law, a major ruling upholding the Second Amendment. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Your local radio stations are here for you. No subscriptions or monthly fees necessary. We're here to give you the news, weather, and traffic you need and the music you love. But if the foreign-owned record labels get their way, it could stop the music. They want Congress to force radio stations to pay them more money simply to play their music. Don't let radio go silent. Text LOCAL to 52886 and tell Congress to protect local radio stations. This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
This is staff meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki with your regional radio forecast. A blend of clouds and sun this afternoon with daytime highs approaching 88. Northerly winds 5 to 10 miles per hour. Lows dip down to about 66. Tonight, mainly clear skies and quiet. Cloudy skies with a few peaks of sun. Tomorrow, high temperatures reach up to 88. Hear weather twice an hour or online anytime at DeWittDailyNews.com. Currently, it's 82.
Man, hang on, everybody. This is going to be a fun show. We've got TikTok influencers that are telling their farm story. Another Flory is back to take us outdoors on the farm, and we're going to take a look at the cost of this year's 4th of July picnic.
Live from 20 Thursday via Farm Journal broadcast, this is AgriTalk. This morning we begin with a conversation with Evelyn, Claudia, and Jojo Lubner for Grit with Grace. Then we go outdoors on the farm with wildlife biologist Andy Kellner and Tom Flory. And later, Carol Flynn from Wells Fargo. Right after the news, Greg Henderson from Drovers. I'm handsome newsman Davis Michelson. Now here's the host of Agri Talk, Chip Laurie.
So we're doing all of that in one show.
Just the one
Am
show.
Am I understanding you correctly? All of that.
That's
in
exactly
one show?
right. That's exactly right. Yes.
Fantastic. Welcome to Agri Talk. I'm Chip. That is Davis. Glad that you're with us this morning. And this Grit with Grace story, it is really a fascinating story to me. It's generally a feel good, generally. But these three young ladies in New York have shown an amazing amount of grit to power through some of the harassment that is associated now, unfortunately, with social media. And they've stuck to it. And they are doing a heck of a job of telling the story of Maple Lane Farms up in Marietta, New York. And it is really a cool story. I'm looking forward to the conversation with Evelyn, Claudia, and JoJo. And Outdoors on the Farm, I talked with Andy Kellner from Iowa DNR about some of the programs that are available through Iowa DNR that are designed to help landowners manage the deer herd on their ground.
Okay.
It's important information because I've seen how the depredation program works. It works very well. Hunters are generally enthusiastic about the program. It's just that there are still landowners out there that are a little hesitant to use it. Well, we'll talk about it and make sure that you feel comfortable about that on Outdoors on the Farm. Of course, that's brought to you by Base Camp Leasing. And then we're going to talk about picnics and the 4th of July costs at the end of the show today. Looking forward to it, buddy. We got a lot of ground to cover. Let's get to the news.
Let's do it. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell will return to Capitol Hill this morning for the second of 2 days of testimony. Yesterday, Powell said the central bank's battle against inflation could lead it to raise interest rates high enough to cause a recession, noting that is not the Fed's intention. His remarks underscore the challenge of slowing the economy and cooling inflation.
Yeah, if members of the Fed, including the chairman, are saying, listen, a recession is certainly a possibility, then we're probably already in a recession.
Elon Musk says Tesla's factories are, quote, gigantic money furnaces right now. Musk said in an interview that plants in Texas and Berlin were losing billions of dollars as battery shortages and shipping issues slow production. Meanwhile, Reuters reports the Biden administration reached out to Tesla the morning that President Biden took office to discuss how to incorporate electric vehicles into the renewable fuel standard with RINs, a topic of discussion, Chip.
I don't think that was the congressional intent of the renewable fuel standard when it was written. They better go back and talk to some of those that were involved in the development of the RFS before they decide that they can start issuing RINs for electric fueled use. Weird.
The president may struggle to get Congress to go along with suspending federal gas and diesel taxes for 3 months, as economists and business leaders say it would do little to address record-high gas prices. U.S. Trade Representative Katherine Tai signaled her unwillingness to eliminate Trump-era tariffs placed on China, saying, quote, the China tariffs are, in my view, a significant piece of leverage, and a trade negotiator never walks away from leverage. While emphasizing the importance of enforcing trade agreements, Tai acknowledged China has not lived up to the terms of the Phase 1 Pact.
Right. And Representative Tai was also questioned about the tariffs on imports of some fertilizers into the U.S. And basically, she pushed it over to commerce and said it's not a trade rep issue, it's a commerce issue.
Well, as expected, the Senate Ag Committee on Wednesday approved the Meatpacking Special Investigator Act and Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act via voice vote. The cattle pricing bill would establish 5 marketing regions in the continental U.S. and require a specified percentage of cattle be traded via the cash market. But despite Senator Chuck Grassley saying the votes are there for full Senate approval, that outcome is far from assured.
It will be interesting to see and watch Senator Grassley round up the votes for these bills.
Russian forces Wednesday targeted at least 2 large grain terminals one owned by a U.S. company and one by a Canadian company, as part of what Kyiv and Western governments say is a campaign to degrade Ukraine's ability to export food. Russia, meanwhile, says it is considering a UN-backed deal to extract grain blockaded in Ukrainian ports. A senior U.S. official also said on Wednesday countries should ask for help if they have any problems importing Russian food and fertilizer, stressing that such goods are not subject to U.S. sanctions over Moscow's war in Ukraine. And finally, the German government moved closer to rationing natural gas today after Russia cut deliveries to the country last week. Kremlin-controlled energy giant Gazprom throttled delivery via the Nord Stream pipeline by around 60%. European prices surged to the highest level since December. Chip.
Yeah. Yep. And we're going to continue to watch that because exports from the U.S. into Germany are going to be going up, up, up. All right.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Davis. Let's bring
You
in
bet.
Greg Henderson, editorial director at Drovers. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning, Chip.
Okay. So we've been learning more about the plant-based alternative meats. What's the latest?
Yeah, so Ohio State researchers, they're telling us now that human cells do not absorb the same level of nutrients from plant-based proteins as they do from meat from animals. And they compared the digestion of these meat analogs and found that humans don't break down into peptides within cells as effectively as real meat, Chip. Interesting, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What does it mean? I mean,
Well,
what's the what might be the consumer reaction to that?
we have further research that's also telling us a new study from the University of Minnesota is telling us that 80% of consumers prefer the real stuff to the fake plant-based products.
Okay.
However, we have to realize that millennials and some of the younger generation still have a higher tendency. About 21% of those people say they will actually be willing to pay more for plant-based products. And that preference is due mainly to their belief that it helps the environment, that livestock production is somehow harder on the environment than plant-based.
Right.
So the stock price, however, Chip, this year, meat Beyond Meat down 65% this year. That compares with the overall Dow Jones Industrial Average. It's down about 17%. So Beyond Meat not doing very well.
Right, right. And now, with the big, I shouldn't say the big health push, but American consumers have always been health conscious, and they want to get from their meal what they need to be as active as they possibly can. And it looks like real meat is the way to go on that front. Good stuff.
Absolutely.
Greg.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it, buddy. Yep, we'll talk to you later. All right. We are going to New York, Maple Lane Farms next, right here on AgriTalk. Ben Leslie is the Chief Impact Officer and Executive VP at Folds of Honor. Ben, give us a high-level description of Folds of Honor and how the organization was founded and what it does today.
So we're a military nonprofit established in 2007 by our founder and CEO, Colonel Dan Rooney, and his wife, Jackie, and haven't wavered our mission since that day, which is to help military families pursue their educational dreams. And we provide educational scholarships to the widows and children of servicemen and women who've been disabled or killed in action. And we provide annual $5,000 scholarships, and we have two unique programs. We send K through 12. We call that our Children's Fund. Then we have a higher educational fund. To date, we've awarded over $160 million to nearly 35,000 military families. There's a Zoetis executive named Jared Shriver, and he called me and said, Ben, we've got a check for $122,000 for you, which is unbelievable. And that was our commitment to Zoetis. If you guys do this program, we're going to help feed the industry. And we've got about 200 recipients in higher ed institutions pursuing an agricultural, a vet med, a veterinarian program. And so this gift of $122,000 from Zoetis, 100% of it is going to go back to help those kids studying just that.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Where can we go to learn more about Folds of Honor?
You can go to Zoetis on their website. They have a whole big page about Folds of Honor, or you can go to our website, foldsofhonor.org. You can learn if you qualify, for a scholarship, or if you're a patriot and you want to stand with these military families like Zoetis is, you can donate there at foldsofhonor.org.
Excellent, Ben. That's Ben Leslie, Chief Impact Officer and Executive VP, Folds of Honor.
Kenny Kopenbarger here from Morgan Distributing in Decatur with an important reminder about your upcoming LP gas use. With the rising cost of energy, have you booked your propane contract? Save money by locking in your price now. Morgan Distributing has 3 contract options to choose from. Call us to get a quote before you pay too much with another supplier. Lock in your propane price and keep your family warm this winter. Call us at Morgan Distributing now, toll free at 800-800-6625. That's 800-800-6625.
Bad news, bug campers. Soybean summer camp is canceled.
But we come here every year.
Listen, Renestra insecticide from BASF is headed this way.
So, no soybean beanbag races.
No!
And no leaf feeding contest.
Did you hear me? Renestra has a new chemistry, a dual mode of action. We're all goners!
Cancel summer for chewing bugs and resistant aphids with the broad spectrum control of Renestra insecticide.
I don't feel so good.
Always read and follow label directions.
This is AgriTalk being streamed at IllinoisFarmRadio.com from WHOW.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com.
Welcome back to AgriTalk. I'm Chip Flory. Glad that you are with us. Guys, the Grit with Grace project is something AgriTalk is proud to support. It was developed by Farm Journal, and it is supported by Zoetis, and we are happy to bring this story to you. Joining us right now are 2 of the 3 New York farm girls, Evelyn and Claudia Lubner. Girls, welcome to AgriTalk. How are you this morning?
Hi, thanks for having us on. We're great. We're excited to be here.
Excellent. Evelyn, what's the deal? You couldn't send a note with JoJo to school and get her out of school so that she could be on AgriTalk? What's going on?
I mean, she's gotten out of school for so many things, farm and New York farm girl related. I think our teachers are a little annoyed.
Well, we certainly appreciate you two making time for us. And I know that you're making time for us because you've all got very specific roles that you play on the farm, and I want to hear all about that. But first, Claudia, just tell me about Maple Lane Farms.
Yeah, so we are a crop and dairy. We have around 1,800 acres of corn, soybeans, wheat, and hay. And then we also have a pumpkin agritourism side down the road. And our farm is a partnership made up of my dad, his sister, and his brother, and then his 2 nephews. And so we're very heavily family operated farm. And Evelyn and I have been working there for a long time. And Evelyn will talk a little bit more about the cow side because I try to stay as far away as them as I can.
Well, Claudia, you're kind of the agronomist of the agronomist of the New York farm girls, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so spending time on the crop side of the operation. Evelyn, what does your job description look like?
Yeah, so I actually just rushed down here to get on this call because I was chasing cows around all morning. But my actual job title is herds manager on our farm. We have about 500 milking cows. Some days it feels like we have 5,000 milking cows, but overall it's not too bad. I work alongside my cousin and my aunt up there. And I pretty much do everything for the health of the cows, and I do a little bit on the calf side of things, but mostly the calves are run by JoJo.
Okay, so when you say the calves are run by JoJo, JoJo is in high school. What is she? What is JoJo's role?
Yeah, so every night after school, she gets home, does her homework, and then she heads right up to the farm, and she takes care of around 100 calves every night, along with our little cousin.
Wow, that's impressive and some dedication right there. And with all of that going on, the 3 of you decided to start a social media campaign on TikTok. Claudia, what was the motivation for that?
Yeah, so back in 2015, actually, Evelyn and I we were just kind of goofing off, and we took so many pictures of cows and everything that we're like, you know what, we should just make a separate account and start posting these pictures. And once we started doing that, we realized how many people are really truly disconnected from agriculture, and they don't really know where their food is coming from. They kind of just think, oh, I'm going to go to the grocery store and get my food because that's where it comes from. But as we all know, it's a little deeper than that. So after we started there, we kind of moved along. So we started on Instagram and Facebook. And then as we started to grow, we grew to the other platforms, and we kind of do daily vlogs on YouTube. We do a little educational thing, but a little more relaxed style there. And then we also kind of have started doing the TikTok thing in 2019. And that's just been really fun for us to follow trends. And yeah, it's been a good ride.
Well, and the TikTok platform has really blown up for you, hasn't it? 500,000 followers, something like that?
Yeah, we're catching up almost to 1 million now. And it's been really cool because TikTok, you can reach so many more people than you can on the other platforms.
Now, explain that to somebody like me that might be able to understand it when you're done with that, Evelyn. Why is TikTok so effective?
Yeah, so there's a thing on TikTok called the For You page, and basically any video you post can randomly go onto the For You page, and then millions of people can see it. So it's not like you're posting your videos to a specific audience. It can really get pushed out to like everybody in the world.
Wow. Okay. You know, this is really it's a clever process, because basically what you're doing, Evelyn, is you're documenting your days, right? What are some of your viewers, some of your followers most surprised to see you and Claudia and JoJo doing?
I think they're just surprised to see people our age and being females just working on a farm. Like, it's not the old man with a pitchfork anymore. We're just like a totally different face to agriculture now. So really, like, anything we post, they find amusing. I think also one of our top comments is, there's farms in New York. We're like, oh my gosh, yes, there's farms in New York. Yep.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so what is the other members of the farm, your family, your cousins, your uncles, your dad, your aunts, what do they think about what you're doing?
At first, our dad was a little bit hesitant because in the beginning when we started, we were getting some bad attention from animal rights activists and all that. But ever since then, it's calmed down, and it's been really cool because we get to partner with a lot of cool brands, and that helps bring new technology onto our farm. So now they're really supportive of it, and we are very thankful for that. I think my dad is more into filming YouTube videos than we are now. He pulls out his phone and he gets the best angles, and he's been really supportive through it all too, because obviously when he was growing up, he wasn't really concerned about filming anything or posting out to the world. So it's definitely probably a big change for him as well.
That's outstanding. I love hearing that. So you mentioned it, that some of the feedback that you got, and the social media can be a really ugly platform for animal agriculture in particular. It seems like animal ag is a regular target. Have you converted some of those haters, or is that even your target? Is that even your goal, Evelyn?
Yeah, so our goal in the beginning was to target the haters, but we quickly realized that's really not worth our time because they kind of have their minds made up. But so now we're targeting that movable middle, those people that aren't really sure about animal agriculture. They're like, I want to drink milk, but I don't know if it's safe. And we really want them to come to us and see how it's brought to them into the grocery store. We want them to know how those animals are treated. And that's who we're really targeting, those people that are unsure and they're not totally anti-agriculture. They just want to learn.
So who is in that movable middle, as you describe it? And how can other farmers reach out to those people?
Yeah, I mean, anybody can be in that movable middle. I know there's even some people that actually used to live on a farm and they're a little bit more disconnected now, and they're like wondering how processes are now in agriculture. So it really can be anybody. And it's really important for all farmers to reach out and get consumers to trust them, because those are our customers at the end of the day. So just get on social media, share your story. It can be super simple. Talk about what you do during your day. If you want to open up your farm to the public, that's a little bit more risky. I think social media is pretty low risk. Yep. And I think also a really good story that we had is we were speaking at we only live 15 minutes from a really populated city. And we were speaking at this school and we kind of were asking like, how many of you guys have been to a farm? They're probably like 5th graders. And they're like, no, I mean, we've seen pictures of cows online. We're like, there's farms 15 minutes from you. And they still like didn't really know, where their milk is actually coming from. So it is really cool to kind of see that light bulb moment go off for like even younger kids as well.
That's really cool. We've only got a minute left, but I want to ask you this question before we figure out how to find you on social media. Tell us about the pumpkin farm. How does that work into telling your story?
Yeah, so the pumpkin farm is a great outlet for that because we have people coming in from all over, like Claudia said, from the city and everywhere. So they're able to come out to the pumpkin farm, see animals. We sell milk in our store, and we're just constantly educating people about where their food comes from. And it's just a great way to get people out to the farm that don't normally get to.
That's fantastic. Really cool. Okay, if we want to follow Evelyn, Claudia, and JoJo Lubner, how do we do it? Where do we find you?
Yeah, so we're on every single platform, and we are NY Farm Girls.
NY
TikTok,
Farm
Instagram.
Girls.
Yep.
Excellent. At NY Farm Girls. Love it. Girls, thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Like you said, I know that you should probably be off doing some chores or something, Evelyn, working with the cows, and Claudia. It's a busy time of the year for you as well, taking care of the crops there at Maple Lane Farm. So I appreciate everything you girls are doing. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Yep, thank you.
You bet. All right, that is Evelyn and Claudia Lubner, speaking for JoJo as well. New York Farm Girls, NY Farm Girls. All right, check them out on social media. We're going outdoors on the farm next.
Ready to build your own ag business helping farmers? Become an FBN community builder. As an independent sales contractor selling seed, crop protection, and livestock products from FBN Direct, you will set your own schedule, grow your business, and be rewarded for helping farmers secure essential, affordable inputs while taking advantage of reliable direct-to-farm delivery. Learn more at fbn.com/CB. Build something big today at fbn.com/CB. Terms and conditions apply.
Maximize your yields with powerful plant health products from Nutrien Ag Solutions. Our local experts are ready to create your custom crop protection and nutrition solution from the widest selection of products, including our lineup of Loveland products to get you the best return on investment. We're leading the field with growers who want it all. Connect with your local crop consultant or head to your nearest retail location.
This is an SRN News special report, a Second Amendment victory at the Supreme Court. I'm Rich Thomason. In a 6-3 ruling, the High Court has struck down a restrictive New York gun law. It required applicants for a concealed carry permit to demonstrate a particular need for carrying a firearm in order to get the license. Writing for the majority, Justice Clarence Thomas, stating that the U.S. Constitution safeguards an individual's right to carry a handgun for self-defense outside the home. The justices contend the New York law violates the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. The impact of the ruling extends far beyond New York, since California, Hawaii, and Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Rhode Island all have similar laws. The Biden administration had urged the High Court to uphold the New York law, which had been on the books since 1913. This has been an SRN News special report. I'm Rich Thomason.
There's a clear choice for Congress. Mary Miller voted with the Socialist Squad to defund our military. Like Joe Biden, Miller coddles criminal illegal immigrants and says it's our responsibility to care for them. And Miller knowingly hired a convicted pedophile to be her driver and allowed him to prowl our neighborhoods and put our kids at risk, abandoning our troops, giving aid to criminals who illegally cross our border. Embracing a convicted pedophile? Fake conservative Mary Miller can't be trusted. Conservative Congressman Rodney Davis voted to strengthen our military and give our troops a pay raise. Davis voted for President Trump's wall and to cut off funding for sanctuary cities. And Davis is endorsed by the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police because he's tough on crime. Rodney Davis is the strong conservative that Illinois families can trust.
I'm Rodney Davis, candidate for Congress, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Rodney for Congress.
At Central Illinois Outdoors with me, Jared White, we want you to be a part of the program as well via the Archer's Alley Catch of the Week. Each week, we'll select one of your pictures submitted at centralillinoisoutdoors.com and invite you to tell your story of the great outdoors. We're looking for your kid's first catch or even your first big buck. There's a simple, easy form you can fill out on your phone or computer at centralillinoisoutdoors.com. Send us your story, send us your pic. centralillinoisoutdoors.com and the Catch of the Week, brought to you by Archer's Alley, North 22nd Street in Decatur.
Let's swing open the farm gate together every day on WHOW. I'm Stu Ellis, your host of the long-running agriculture feature called The Farm Gate. I bring the latest news and information on where agriculture is and where it's going to WHOW Ag listeners several times a day. From tariffs to treaties, from the Board of Trade to the running board on your truck, I cover Central Illinois agriculture every day on The Farm Gate. Hear it all on WHOW's many platforms on the radio or online. Join me, Stu Ellis, for The Farm Gate.
This is AgriTalk being streamed at IllinoisFarmRadio.com from WHOW.
Opinions expressed on AgriTalk do not necessarily reflect the views of Farm Journal Broadcasting, affiliate stations, or sponsors. Outdoors on the Farm is brought to you by Basecamp Leasing. Turn your huntable farmland into a growing income stream through our hunting rights lease program. Learn more at basecampleasing.com.
We treated right. Work the crops and manage the wildlife.
Man, I love that theme song. Welcome back to AgriTalk and Outdoors on the Farm. This month's episode of Outdoors on the Farm, sponsored by Basecamp Leasing. Check out what Basecamp offers landowners. The benefits are really cool here, guys. Give it a look, basecampleasing.com. It's June, and I am still thinking about deer and deer season. And to celebrate the deer and deer season, I've got Tom Flory. My son is back with me outdoors on the farm. How you doing, buddy?
Good, and you?
Doing just fine, just fine. You've got a piece of ground that you are managing for deer, and I want to talk not about so much about the ground right now. Let's talk about the herd. I mean, you're looking at pictures from your ground all the time. How does the health of the deer herd on your ground look like?
It looks really good. We've got a lot of summer browse out there. I mean, we got plenty of grass, plenty of leaves for them to munch on all year. Even if it does get dry out, I mean, that's providing enough moisture and nutrients for them. Plus, the clover plots help a lot.
Absolutely. Now, part of your management of that herd is to make sure that we do take some does during deer season off of there. Have you been satisfied by the number of does taken in the last couple of years?
Yeah, the first two seasons we knocked off a pretty good amount. I mean, we probably took 12 to 15 does in 2 years, which is a good amount. But I mean, we all remember that first year when you have 60 come and run on off of about an 80-acre chunk.
Right.
That's a lot of deer, especially doe to buck ratio. I want it down to that two doe to one buck. That 3 to 1 range is what I would like it to be at, and I feel pretty confident we're going to be there this year.
Okay. All right. But we're going to need to stay at it and keep working at it. And that means that we're going to have to take some more does off of that ground. I got no problem with that. They taste pretty good. So, hey, as part of the herd management plan, Iowa has doe tags or antlerless only tags available in each county that give hunters a chance to take multiple deer in a year. And if you are a landowner that is dealing with a big deer population, there are some tools that can help you manage a population. Joining us now is Andy Kellner. He is a wildlife biologist for the Iowa Department of Natural Resources covering Southwest Iowa. Andy, welcome to Outdoors on the Farm. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. You're on the staff of the Iowa DNR Wildlife Depredation Program. Tell us about that program.
Yeah, it's a program in Iowa where, when the phone rings, you're never quite sure what it's going to be. We help landowners or the public with anything from a mysterious turtle in the backyard to deer damage and row crop situations and everything in between. So we try to do a lot of education, a lot of outreach to folks about what's going on in areas, and then help provide some tools for when there is a conflict at hand and how it can be best addressed on their property.
Okay, it's those depredation tags for deer that I want to talk about and focus on, because when it comes to that's where wildlife and farming kind of sometimes collide. The deer damage in cornfields. How does a farmer, a landowner, go about evaluating whether or not they are eligible for some of these depredation tags?
Oh, it's a good question, and we're getting to that time of the year, right? As we get into July, we're likely to start seeing some more damage crop up in your corn and beans and those sorts of things. I always advise folks to have a very active view of what's going on in the farm. Walk those timber edges and be cognizant of what you're seeing. If there is quite a bit of damage starting to show up, giving a call to the local depredation staff, and that information can be found on our website or in the hunting regulations. Get that conversation going with them, and we pride ourselves in getting out there on the farm real quick and walking with that producer to take a look at what's going on and really evaluate how much damage is occurring, what's the best fit for these scenarios, and talk about what hunting seasons are we already utilizing, what's going on for management of the deer herd in the area on your side of the fence and the neighbor's side of the fence and all those things. It's a big conversation to be had.
Oh yeah, and just trying to evaluate and quantify how much damage has been done is quite the effort, no question about that. But so they are. Let's say that a landowner is eligible for depredation tags. How can those tags be used?
Sure. So depredation tags are good for during the hunting seasons in Iowa. So that's starting as early as the youth season in September, getting some kids out there to start harvesting some does. And the depredation tags can be purchased for any of the hunting seasons throughout the year. That goes from September all the way into January. So a hunter still has to qualify for that season, still be legal to hunt it, but then they can do so. And I really emphasize and talk about the importance of those early hunting seasons and targeting those local deer, raising the fawns on those properties before they get all stirred up by the harvest, by the rut, by the changing seasons. And so they operate just like the season that they're purchased for. And basically, it's this extra quota that's available for the farm to really help lower the number of antlerless deer. We want to target does to affect that local population right where there's an issue going on.
In addition to this, in the state of Iowa, DNR has identified certain areas where doe tags or antlerless tags are available for bow season, muzzleloader, and then the 2 regular gun seasons. There's a specified number of doe tags that are available per county. Now, after that, after the season, if there are some of those antlerless tags still available, there has been a rifle season in some of the southern counties, and now that season is going to be expanded to other eligible counties in the state, right?
So there's some new legislation that if there's county antlerless tags still available after the late muzzleloader season ends, so that's January 10th, that would automatically bring in a January rifle season for those counties. So that would be new in a number of counties to utilize whatever leftover antlerless tags are available for that county. And what I would say, like to my point earlier, something to be wary of is, again, the deer patterns are very different in January than they are in October. If you're looking at deer damage to crops, I'm pushing folks to be looking at that harvest of deer in September, October, before November, and the deer really get moved around. But it is a tool that's going to be in the tool bag, if you will, for folks where there needs to be a little bit more harvest of antlerless deer in certain areas.
All right. That conversation there with Andy Kellner from Iowa DNR. He's a wildlife biologist there. Tom, one of the things that I heard very clearly from him, and the ground that we've hunted traditionally there in Oxford Junction at Bisinger's, Jim is out there evaluating deer damage now, and he continues to evaluate that damage during the growing season. You don't wait for the combine to roll, do you?
No, you got to get out there and do it right away. And that helps with the numbers of the amount of doe tags for the county.
Yep, exactly. So this new expanded rifle season for counties that have these leftover doe tags, what's your thought on that?
I'm not a huge fan of it, especially with the 223 being a new caliber into the options. A 223 is not a deer killer for me.
No. It's a high-powered 22.
Yeah, it's a varmint killer. I mean, you don't see people going out west where rifles are legal and hunting them with 223. And I'm afraid that does in January, they are big. They are big does. If you shoot a doe in the gut with a 223, she's going to heal up and she could possibly die in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm afraid of. And another thing are the shed bucks. I've made mistakes. I've shot 2 shed bucks in my days, and that was just the January 10th. Could you imagine this going later into the year? I mean, I'm not a huge fan of it. And you can people can shoot a lot further with a 223. So
I did talk with Andy about that, about the risk of harvesting some shed bucks, and he says it is a risk. It happens every year. That there are some shed bucks that are harvested even in that January season. If you push this all the way out to the end of January in some of these counties, Tom, the risk is going to be very real. The other thing that we talked about then is because you're using a rifle, take your time and really look at what your target is. Look at how that animal is holding its head. Look at how that animal just carries its body. You can tell the difference between a buck and a doe. You just have to take your time to figure it out, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's completely right. And, you can tell the difference between a bigger bodied buck, but what about those 2 and 3 year olds? Yeah. I mean, if they only had 3 points on each side, you can't see those nubs if they shed those antlers already, especially if it's in an unhealthy herd, then those antlers are probably already gone.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. The big thing that you got to look at is that neck. How does that neck carry down into the brisket of that deer and down into the chest? And you've got to work hard at identifying it. But I agree with you, Tom. I'm concerned about the 223. Being able to be used on deer in Iowa and some of these counties. It's a varmint gun, and it is a gun that if a landowner has a problem, if a farmer has a problem with some coyote population, there might be a 223 in the combine that you can grab quick and use. Well, do you use that during deer season, during one of these antlerless doe seasons when you're out just running around? Some mistakes could be made if you're making a quick decision on it. Tom, thanks so much, buddy. I appreciate you.
Yep, see ya.
All right, that's Tom Flory. That's my boy and my partner, Outdoors on the Farm. And we also had a conversation with Iowa DNR Andy Kellner. We'll be back with more Agri Talk here in a moment.
Having a hard time finding the correct new car, truck, SUV, or crossover to fit your needs? This is Scott Baum from Bob Chevrolet Buick here in Clinton. Some lots look low on inventory, so go to our website, look at our pre-order and reserve tab. You'll see inventory in transit, which are built and on their way to Clinton, and in production, new Chevys and Buicks, which are being built and will arrive soon. Or you can always call our sales team. They can help you find the correct one just for you. BombChevyBuick.com, right from the start.
Getting your pet's needed medications is easy with Covenant Animal Clinic in Clinton.
Yes, very convenient, especially because I live in Bloomington. It always gets delivered right to your door.
I've used the online pharmacy. It's so easy.
Click the Covenant Animal Clinic icon at DeWittDailyNews.com to learn more.
Eagle Ridge Supportive Living Indicator is affordable to everyone. Marketing Director Carla Thomas here, inviting you to schedule your tour by clicking our icon at DeWittDailyNews.com and start enjoying supportive living.
When did elections become a game? Like hide and seek for grown-ups. Tricky grown-ups. Look at Rodney Davis. Do you ever hear Davis talk about his votes to send your tax dollars to Planned Parenthood? True. Davis voted for taxpayer funding of Planned Parenthood. 4 times. 4 times Davis voted for taxpayer funding of Planned Parenthood, the biggest abortion provider in the country. You won't find that on his campaign website. See? Hide and seek. There's more. Davis once bragged, quote, "I can't wait to work with Nancy Pelosi." And then Davis voted with Pelosi 1,077 times. Rodney Davis, you know his game. Davis talks like a Republican here and votes like a Democrat in Washington. Paid for by Conservative Outsider PAC, copac.us, and not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. Conservative Outsider PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
AgriTalk continues on the WHOW app for iPhones and Androids from the Big Red Barn. JT, who have you got with you today?
Hey, I've got a client of ours, Eric Niemeyer, who's a landowner and farmer from Central Ohio, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about the benefits of working with Basecamp.
Let's get right to it. Eric, tell me about your experience with Basecamp. How's it working out for you?
Sure. It's been working out great. I've been working with them for the last 3 or 4 years, and actually was referred to them by a neighbor, another landowner farmer that had worked with them and had a great experience. And frankly, I had been hounded for several years by several different local folks wanting to hunt my land, and frankly, glad to have somebody hunt it, but did not really enjoy the management of that and trying to keep everything coordinated. Plus, I am a first generation farmer too, so always looking for ways to diversify my income and manage my farm responsibly. And Basecamp has really provided a nice option for that. The experience has been great. And, frankly, it's really minimized the effort and the work on my part and provides a nice opportunity to diversify income.
Right. JT, that's what you're looking for, isn't it?
It is, a really great partnership with landowners and farmers across the U.S. is exactly what we try to achieve with everyone.
Right. JT, if there are some landowners listening that want to get in that kind of a relationship with Basecamp, where do they get more information?
Well, they can go to basecampleasing.com on the internet, or they can give us a call at 866-484-3765.
Excellent. Great to meet you, Eric. And JT, thank you, buddy. Give JT a call, 866-484-3765. JT Krager, CEO, Basecamp Leasing.
That is definitely noise.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Hi, everybody. I'm AgriTalk host Chip Flory.
And I'm Pearl Farmer Policy Analyst Jim Wiesmeyer. Join us to sort the DC policy signals from the noise every Monday morning.
DC Signal to Noise live streams on the Farm Journal YouTube channel and on the Facebook pages for AgriTalk, Farm Journal, and Pro Farmer.
Or catch the podcast on your favorite platform.
DC Signal to Noise, Jim Wiesmeyer and Chip Flory, Monday mornings, 8:15 Central.
Picture yourself driving the tractor of your dreams, creeping up and down the rolling hills, enjoying an incredible sunset, and feeling satisfied that you were able to finally find your dream tractor at a reasonable price. Visit MachineryPete.com for the best selection of used tractors, skid steers, mowers, and more. We've revolutionized searching for equipment online. Find exactly what you're looking for quickly and easily. Your next piece of equipment is only a click away on MachineryPete.com. Visit MachineryPete.com now.
Outdoors on the Farm is brought to you by Basecamp Leasing. Turn your huntable farmland into a growing income stream through our hunting rights lease program. Learn more at basecampleasing.com.
All right, welcome back to AgriTalk. And hey, I had an extended conversation with Andy Kellner from the Iowa DNR about evaluating herd health, including some of the things that you need to be watching for regarding chronic wasting disease and CWD. That full conversation is available at agritalk.com. Check it out right now. It is available there. And again, thanks to Basecamp Leasing for making that possible. Wells Fargo's July 4th food inflation report is out. And Carol Flynn is a Wells Fargo food and agribusiness industry advisor. She joins us right now to talk about it. Carol, welcome to AgriTalk.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. Glad that you're here. Okay. I mean, Carol, I've been doing some of the shopping, and I was just in the grocery store this week looking at some of the prices, and it's shocking in some cases how much of an increase we're looking at year over year. what kind of an impact is that having on the 4th of July picnic?
Well, the pain you feel is real, for sure,
Yeah.
Chip, and it's happening fast. We put together this, just to take a look at what it might cost celebrants for this year's 4th of July feast versus last year. As you might have been tracking, we were looking at 8.3, 8.5% food price inflation end of the year and first quarter, but we did this little menu for 10, and it's looking like 10.5, 11%. And we all know that July 4th picnic goods are not, it's not a fancy spread. So
Right.
This is really, it is shocking. I think you found exactly the right word for that. The bottom line is details matter about what you include in that spread.
Exactly. Well, let's talk about what we're including in the spread. And one of my favorite things to do on the 4th of July is get the grill out and put a variety of meats on that grill. But earlier this week when I was in the store, I was getting ready to do some stir fry, and I was looking at chicken prices. And Carol, I barely wanted to spend the money.
Right. Look, as a farmer and rancher myself, anytime prices are high, it doesn't mean that it's going back into the farmer producer's pocket. The issue with chicken right now is really disease pressure and supply. And for the consumer and for you shopping, it's all about relative bargains or relative value. And chicken just isn't the relative value right now. It turns out that, and I'm glad to hear there's a diversity of products and meat, real meat, animal proteins on your grill, but it looks like you're going to be including more pork and more shrimp. Those are in a unique situation. Shrimp really was, shrimp demand was cut back because of the closures of food service and restaurants during COVID. Now there's a supply issue, better supply. Imports, of course, most shrimp is imported. So with these currency valuation changes, it favors some imports, favors some shrimp. So it's easy to store frozen. So that might mean you get the seafood portion of your grill gets a little more, looks better this year. But I don't forget the beef. I'm going to tell you now, don't forget the beef, but it's still going to be relatively expensive. I'd like to see more pork. I remember being at a farm show one time watching my kids with pork chops on a stick. I'm going to try to bring that back for 4th of July.
Love it. Iowa State Fair, baby. We got pork chops on a stick down there. It's it is a regular feast for me, no question. I love in your tips for keeping the cost down. You're looking at tacos. Serve some tacos. It makes all the sense in the world to me.
Sure, it does. And you know what it does is it really gives you a place to search the produce section for bargains. My favorite tacos have cabbage and cilantro and tomatoes. All of those things are relative bargains in the produce department.
Right. But if you're going to put some guacamole on it, you better look out there.
All right. I'm doing my plug for California avocados right now. We're just getting into the avocado season. You're going to see some seasonality moderation around prices. But yeah, don't forget the guacamole. Be careful and be thoughtful about mindful where you buy it. There's a lot of frozen and innovative guacamole products now. Look around and maybe wait, be patient. But California avocados are about to hit the market.
Okay, as long as we're in the frozen food section, what about ice cream? Can we have some ice cream on a piece of pie?
Now you're talking. Look, I am a big advocate and understand the pain in the dairy sector at the moment. All the components have increased price-wise because of the feed costs. Your listeners are very familiar with what's happening in the commodity cycle right now. Non-dairy items in the dairy case are going to be a little more relatively easier on the budget, but there is nothing like real dairy products to be the the highlight of your apple pie thing. So maybe it's
Right.
just 1 scoop instead of 3 scoops, Chip.
I'll keep that in mind. So we're looking at costs this year up about 11% from last year. The double digits makes more sense to me than than the 8% consumer price increase. What about next year? Is there a chance for some relief in the year ahead?
I definitely think there is. Look, anytime there's price inflation, there's 2 components at work. The first is cost inflation for the producer. All of us are familiar with the very rough waters we've been after. Data analytics are better than ever, and any kind of substitution from demand or reduction in demand is going to moderate these prices. I think we're up for some improvement as the year unfolds.
Well, we certainly need it. As I was shopping and looking at some of the young families that were in there making some really tough decisions about how to use their food dollars, I sure hope that there is some relief coming their way. Carol, thank you so much for making time for us.
Of course, Chip, it's great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
You bet. That's Carol Flynn, Wells Fargo Food and Agribusiness Industry Advisor. Hey, thank you so much for listening this morning. Come back this afternoon. We've got Ryan Wagner, Bolt Marketing, and Wagner Farms right here on AgriTalk.
Farming is more than a livelihood. It's a legacy. Simplot was founded by a hardworking farmer like you over 90 years ago, and we've been growing America's farms for generations. With local crop advisors grounded in your success, Simplot Grower Solutions is in your fields and by your side. We dig in deep to pinpoint what you need, where you need it, when you need it, even when the forecast is unpredictable. Find your local crop advisor at simplotgrowersolutions.com.
United Pork Americas features 3 days dedicated to the future of the pork industry. Producers, veterinarians, nutritionists, consultants, researchers, and other pork industry stakeholders from across the globe will congregate September 7th through the 9th in Orlando, Florida. More than 40 internationally renowned speakers will present, and United Pork Americas is committed to unparalleled global networking. Find out more, www.unitedporkamericas.com.
Let's check the markets now on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Jim Taylor. Corn, beans, and wheat all trading double-digit lower. July corn 747 down 21. September corn down 33 1/4, 668 3/4. December new crop 658 down 35 3/4. July beans 1597 1/2 down 55 1/4. August beans down 53, 1511. November new crop 1421 3/4 down 54 3/4. July wheat 954 1/4 down 22 1/4. September wheat 966 down 22 3/4. July bean meal 425.70 down 670. July bean oil 69.03 down $1.63. In the livestock market, June live cattle 135.85 down 27 cents. August feeders 174.60 up 145. July lean hogs down $1.47 110.37. In the energy market, August Brent crude oil 110.84 down 90 cents. I'm Jim Taylor.
The Big 1520 WHOW Clinton, 92.3 FM W222 BG Clinton, 106.5 FM W293 DJ Normal Bloomington.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm John Scott. The Supreme Court striking down a New York gun law in a ruling expected to directly impact half a dozen other states. The justice's 6-3 decision expected to allow more people to carry guns legally on the streets of the nation's largest cities. That includes New York, Los Angeles, and Boston, and elsewhere. About a quarter of the U.S. population lives in states expected to be affected by the ruling, the High Court's first major gun decision in more than a decade. President Biden commended wounded warriors for their bravery and sacrifice.
You're the best America has to offer. That's not hyperbole. You're the best America has to offer. You embody the soul and the spirit of the nation. As I like to say, you're the very spine of America.
More than 24 veteran and active duty troops rode 2 laps around the South Lawn as part of a multi-day cycling event. Also at townhall.com, Biden administration officials are meeting with big oil executives today about increasing capacity and lowering prices. White House correspondent Greg Clugston with that report.
Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says the goal is to sit down with energy company executives and come up with solutions.
That we work with the CEOs to figure out what else that we can do to move that capacity forward.
The meeting comes after President Biden sent letters to the 7 oil company CEOs last week, urging them to boost the supply of gasoline and diesel. Greg Clugston, the White House.
And a bloodhound named Trumpet won the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show Wednesday night, making the first time the breed has ever snared U.S. Dogdom's most coveted prize, or Best in Show prize. On Wall Street, the Dow is down 52 points, the NASDAQ ahead 86. More at townhall.com.
Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, overdesigned, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like buy a world-class German blade factory. Obsessing over every detail means we're confident in offering a 100% quality guarantee. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's, so thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try with this special offer. Get a Harry starter set with a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, shave gel, and a travel cover, all for just $3 plus free shipping. Just go to harrys.com and enter 3388 at checkout. That's harrys.com, code 3388. Enjoy.
In Afghanistan, a powerful earthquake has killed about 1,000 people. Charles de Ledesma with a report.
One villager interviewed by the state-run news agency says in Pashto 35 members of his family died in the quake, including his sons and grandchildren. Meanwhile, survivors are digging, many by hand, through hard-to-reach villages in the east, which have been reduced to rubble. The agency adds an estimated 1,500 others are reported injured. The quake is Afghanistan's deadliest in 2 decades, and officials say the toll could rise. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
Okinawa marking the 77th anniversary of the end of one of the bloodiest battles of World War II. The Battle of Okinawa killed about 200,000 people, nearly half of them Okinawan residents. Breaking news at townhall.com. A former West Virginia lawmaker gets 3 months for his role in the January 6 U.S. Capitol riot.
Derek Evans, a former West Virginia lawmaker who live-streamed himself on Facebook taking part in the U.S. Capitol riot, was sentenced to 3 months in prison Wednesday. The 37-year-old Evans pleaded guilty to a felony civil disorder charge. He told the judge he is a good person who unfortunately was caught up in the moment. Evans, a Republican from Pritchard, West Virginia, had been sworn in as a member of the House of Delegates just weeks before the January 6th, 2021 riot. He was arrested 2 days later and resigned a month before the start of the legislative session. I'm Mike Gracia.
The White House launching a partnership with 11 East Coast governors to boost the growing offshore wind industry. President Biden has a goal of deploying enough offshore wind power by 2030 to provide electricity to 10 million homes. More on these stories at townhall.com.
MR Systems Wireless is your local internet provider for Clinton and surrounding area. They have the products you want and the local service you deserve. MR Systems Wireless Internet service for home or business includes unlimited data, unlimited streaming, and unlimited calling. Plans start at just $48 a month and get a free Roku 4 lease with our media packages. Get the speed you need with MR Systems Wireless. Call them at 935-2100. That's 935-2100 for MR Systems Wireless.
This is staff meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki with your regional radio forecast. Lots of sunshine this afternoon with highs around 88. North winds 5 to 10 miles per hour. Mainly clear skies and quiet again. Tonight, lows around 66. Cloudy skies with a few peaks of sun. Tomorrow, high temperatures reach up to 88. Upper 80s Saturday, low 80s by Sunday. Hear weather twice an hour or online anytime at DeWittDailyNews.com. Currently, it's 84.
Pearson. Thanks for listening to Agriculture of America. Join me Monday through Friday for the latest farm and agriculture news from around the world.
informing America's farmers and ranchers. This is AOA, produced by the American Ag Radio Network. Now, here's your host, Mike Pearson.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for tuning in to AOA today. We've got a big show coming. The markets, as some of you may have noticed, are in a bit of a free fall today in the grains. We're going to check in with Brian Splitt of agmarket.net about what's developing there in just a minute. Then in segment 2, we're going to talk to Tanner Bramer of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Senate Ag Committee did some work on bills that could impact the cattle industry yesterday. Tanner will bring us up to speed on what happened there in D.C. And then in segment 3, we're going to talk with Nicholas Sullivan. He's a researcher and a professor at Tufts University and keeps track of the aquaculture markets and thinks there's a lot of room for aquaculture to expand in this country. He'll share those insights later on. And at the end of the show, we're going to check in with Mike Steenhoek, the executive director of the Soy Transportation Coalition, about the gas tax holiday proposed yesterday by President Biden, what it could mean for consumers, and importantly, what it could mean for infrastructure as we look to rejuvenate that across rural America. Before we get to all of that, though, let's talk about these markets, which saw some weakness develop earlier in the overnight, and that weakness has continued. Joining me now is Brian Splitt. Brian, what's happening today in the ag trade?
Hey, Mike. Yeah, we're doing all kinds of chart damage today, and we've been doing so. Really, the wheat market was the first one to what I would consider take out major support. So if you think back to when we had Memorial Day weekend, and we came out of that weekend sharply lower across the board. We put in some pretty strong lows at the beginning of the month of June. And so wheat was the first market, winter wheat, to take out those June lows and then take out its 100-day moving average. So it's really leading the way to the downside. Now, we this week saw the soybean market do the same. Yesterday, we took out the June lows. We took out the uptrend that's been in place since April, and we took out the 100-day. And so now we're seeing that happen in corn today. We took out the June lows. That was at 682. And so here we are at that same session, now 20 cents below that. We're down 30 cents on these corn. And you definitely have an element not only of a change in the weather pattern, but also, I think more importantly for the big picture, a change from the standpoint of the Federal Reserve. And this is a market right now where they want to get inflation under control. They are in charge. And if you are in the mood of not fighting the Fed, you do not want to be long commodities.
No, you certainly don't. And I think what has surprised me, Brian, watching this market move here really over the past month is from May 17th until today, we've given up $3 in Chicago wheat September. I mean, now that we've broken down through those important trend lines, what's the next leg lower should it happen?
So this September Chicago wheat has a very important level just under us. We had some lows made in March. One set was at 961 and one set was at 958. That 958 low was right before the quarterly stocks and planting intentions report. We've got a low today of 960 3/4. Should we hold here, and we very well might, we're getting extremely oversold here. So if we can catch in this area, I don't see why we might not be able to bounce back up, maybe to the 1030 to 1040 area on this contract, and that's going to be some stiff resistance. But I would venture to say that if we just fall right through these lows that were made in March, you're probably going down to about 850, and you're going to see another dollar come out of this market because these rallies there's no traffic. This is when we went straight up during the invasion. So there's not traffic, there's not consolidation to go look at again. You're just going to drop right through it like an elevator shaft.
Well, that drop is also carrying on in the corn market today. We've got old crop down 14, new crop down 22. I mean, run us through again that same leg. If this weakness continues here, Brian, what's the risk for corn in the short term?
Well, you've got all these little levels that were kind of established on the way up in corn, and that rally was a little bit more orderly than it was in wheat. Because the market was so focused on wheat during the invasion of Ukraine, but you're going to have some support here at this 660 area. We had some highs in mid-March at 658. This is an area that should be a decent little shelf. Now, if you drop through that, I think you're looking at really the low end of that shelf, and this is back in March, was down around 630. So if this market does keep going through this area, you're looking at another 30 cents to 630. If we get through the 630 area, I think you're looking at the low the day after the invasion, 577 and a quarter. And let's not forget, there's a gap that was left down there back at early February at 574 and a quarter. So if the market wants to go looking to fill a gap, I know there's one above us. We just left it at 728 and a quarter coming out of the weekend, but we do have a major gap below us from February. So if we go in bear market mode, that's going to be the target all the technicians are looking for.
Oh, yeah. Watch those gaps. They do get filled. Brian, soybeans going through the exact same phenomenon today. We're seeing big declines both in old and new crop. Again, is this just inflation fears leaving the market as the recession fears?
Well, so I think there's a ton of different elements in here, and the inflation recession is one side of it, and that's a major money flow issue, and the funds have been maintaining a long position. And I think they wanted to see what the weather was going to look like, because where the balance sheets look like they are right now, we knew that if we did have a legitimate weather problem this year, that our stocks were going to tighten up further. The stocks to use numbers would support higher prices. But I think now that it appears that the forecast has flipped and we don't have that concern of a major hot and dry event, that the funds, because of that overhanging Federal Reserve issue, are now selling their long positions very, very aggressively. So when I look at the November soybeans, today we're taking out the May lows. So here's something that I think everybody needs to be mindful of that's listening to this. And if you think charts matter and you think the guys in New York that are trading this stuff and that they follow charts, there's a monthly key reversal in November soybeans. So to begin the month, we made new contract highs up to 1584 and 3/4. Overnight, we took out the May low. So now you've got the month of June made new contract highs and now is trading below the previous month's lows. That's a bad sign. So below 1438 and a quarter at the end of the month is bad, and below $14 is even worse. You've got these lows that were made on April 1st, and I think if you see the other side of those lows, we're going right back into the $12.50 to $13 price zone.
All right. I know yagmarket.net also just published your acreage expectations for next Thursday. Brian, what do you think? We're going to see more soybean acres?
You know what? We actually had a touch more on both corn and on soybean acres. So the planting intention number from the USDA back in March on soybeans was 90.96 million acres. We made a very, very slight revision higher to 91.1. And on corn, the USDA planting intention number was 89.49. Our corn acreage number was 89.7. So again, a very, very slight increase. And we're very well aware there's been areas in the Corn Belt where we've lost some acres. We also realize high commodity prices, talking to our customers in every corner of the Corn Belt. We probably picked up some acres in some areas as well.
All right, we'll see how that verifies next Thursday on the 30th for that final acreage number. Brian Split of agmarket.net, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
And folks, stick around. Tanner Bremer of NCBA will join us when we return.
Hi, this is Mike Pearson. You're listening to AOA, Agriculture of America. Don't go away. More AOA coming right up.
Hi, I'm Secretary Tom Vilsack. In my 40-plus years of experience in the ag industry, I have seen firsthand the tremendous value and influence of the Census of Agriculture. A complete count of our farms, ranches, and the people who operate them that tells the story of U.S. agriculture. It highlights trends, needs, and the great impact agriculture has on every American, as well as folks around the world. Ag Census data also informs federal, state, and local decisions that will affect you and your operations for years to come. If you're an ag producer, no matter the size of your operation, urban or rural, and you did not receive the 2017 Census of Agriculture and did not receive other USDA surveys, you still have time to sign up to receive the 2022 Ag Census this fall. Every voice matters. To sign up or learn more, visit nas.usda.gov/ag census. Thank you.
Mike Rowe here with a gentle reminder that civilization is held together by pipes, wires, and cables. It's true. There are over 5 million miles of gas lines, power lines, fiber optic lines, water lines, and sewer lines, all buried beneath your feet. And every 60 seconds, somebody digs into one. Look, if you're thinking about digging around, do yourself a favor and call 811 first just to find out what's down there. Trust me, you don't want to find out the hard way. Call or click 811 before you dig and visit safeexcavator.com for more info.
Hi, I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you out because only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Assistant Smokey Bear, call me Papa Bear because I'm grilling up dinner. You get it?
Yes, good job.
So, what should I do with all these coals?
Don't just toss them out. Put them in a metal container because those embers can start a wildfire.
I understand. The stakes are high.
Ha, 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 ha.
Learn more at smokeybear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Scott Baum here from Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton. Search our big selection of pre-owned cars and trucks by clicking our icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
Dr. Bradley Grant here from Midstate Eye in Clinton. Many people aren't aware that vision insurance benefits can be used towards purchasing prescription sunglasses. Find out more by clicking on Midstate Eye icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
Kenny Kopenbarger here from Morgan Distributing in Decatur with an important reminder about your upcoming LP gas use. With the rising cost of energy, have you booked your propane contract? Save money by locking in your price now. Morgan Distributing has 3 contract options to choose from. Call us to get a quote before you pay too much with another supplier. Lock in your propane price and keep your family warm this winter. Call us at Morgan Distributing now, toll free at 800-800-6625. That's 800-800-6625.
You're listening to AOA, Agriculture of America. This is Mike Pearson, and you can rely on us for the latest farm and ranch news from around the world.
Keeping America's farmers and ranchers informed on AOA. Now back to Mike Pearson.
Well, folks, thanks for tuning in to AOA today. Yesterday, the Senate Ag Committee got to work on a couple of bills that have been hotly discussed in the ag industry for the better part of this past year and saw some forward movement on these bills. Now, there's still a lot of discussion left ahead, so in order to make sure we've got the right facts at hand, I've asked Tanner Bramer. He is with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. He's the Vice President of Government Affairs to join us today. Tanner, thanks for joining us here on AOA.
Absolutely, Mike. Thanks for having me back.
So let's talk what the Senate Ag Committee did yesterday. They took up a discussion on the Cattle Market Price Discovery and Transparency Act of 2022. Tanner, what did the Senate Ag Committee do with that particular piece of legislation?
Well, it was disappointing, but not altogether surprising that the Senate Agriculture Committee marked up that particular piece of legislation. Now, that bill contains a lot of different provisions, many of which NCBA supports. However, the sponsors of this bill, despite our multiple attempts to try and make that into a product that can be supported by not just NCBA, but the American Farm Bureau Federation and a host of cattle producing organizations on the state level, those efforts just were unsuccessful because the sponsors did not want to have that conversation with us. So the bill does contain a provision which would mandate specific types of trades in the fed cattle industry. And those trades are negotiated style, but it's not just what would constitute a negotiated trade under USDA's definition. And because it would place an undue mandate on cattle producers and the method that they use to transact cattle, we have to be opposed to this legislation. We were disappointed to see it get marked up in the Senate Agriculture Committee yesterday.
Tanner, NCBA has been discussing this legislation and the ramifications of its passage for some time with your members across the country. What is it that your members might lose should this legislation pass that would hurt their ability to do business?
Well, in actuality, in the simplest form, is it would put the federal government in the position of choosing winners and losers in the marketplace. You know, this bill would require that on a regional basis, every single fed cattle transaction would be subject to certain thresholds or quotas, if you will, of certain types of trade. And so if we get through a covered period and the packers have purchased all the cattle that are offered on those types of methods and they still haven't hit their threshold, they're going to need to go to some of their producers and some of their suppliers and say, hey, look, I'd like to buy your cattle, but I can't buy them the way that you want to sell them because we have to hit this arbitrary threshold that's been established by USDA. And so those producers might miss out on premiums that are attached to grids. They might lose out on some of their risk management opportunities because they might not be able to give up some of those arrangements and then have to sell cattle at a later date. As we know, finished cattle, once they reach their target weight, are a perishable commodity, and they have to go to the packer relatively quickly once they achieve that target weight. So ultimately, we're deciding, between what producers have access to these critical tools and which ones, unfortunately, are going to be told that they can't sell cattle the way that they want to.
And it comes back to that mandatory minimum purchase requirement. Now, Tanner, I understand that Senator Marshall of Kansas proposed an amendment to the bill that would eliminate that particular segment of this bill, and that amendment was pulled. Do you think that might have traction once this gets to the floor of the Senate?
Well, I think assuming that the bill gets to the floor at all, that is something that I think would be pretty widely supported among senators who represent cattle states but might not serve on the Senate Agriculture Committee. We heard a lot yesterday in the markup about how both this bill and the other bill that was considered are bipartisan in nature. But I think the thing that has been less discussed is that they are also subject to bipartisan opposition once you get off the committee. We saw senators from Nevada weigh in a formal way, both Democrats saying that they oppose the bill, and you have a host of Republicans from cattle states that are also opposed to government mandates. And so I think that in the event that the bill reaches the floor, which I don't know what the likelihood of is, just given how little time is left on the calendar this year, that could very well be a discussion that senators want to have in the context of the full Senate.
All right. And you mentioned we don't know if this is going to make it to the floor. The next step would be, though, a floor vote from the Senate and then some kind of conference with the House and the Senate versions. Are there big differences between the House and Senate versions of this bill?
So fortunately, the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act does not have a House companion which is advanced through the legislative process. It's been introduced, but it has not had a hearing or a markup in the House Agriculture Committee. On the special investigator side, on the other hand, however, that bill obviously did clear the House of Representatives a couple weeks ago. And Senator Grassley, in the markup yesterday, offered an amendment which would bring that bill more so in line with what the House passed last week or the week before that. And so it's unclear. We haven't seen the specific language to know whether or not that would require them to have some sort of a conference or whether they can make those technical revisions before it gets on the floor and negate the need to do that. But again, in the U.S. Senate, you have to get 60 votes in order to invoke cloture and proceed to final passage of this legislation or any bill that comes up in the Senate. And I don't know, again, what the likelihood of that is, just given how controversial these issues are off the committee and how little time there is remaining between here and when Congress goes on recess in August and then goes home to campaign for the midterm elections.
Well, Tanner, you raised the issue of that meat special investigator bill, meat and poultry special investigator. Now, that was also marked up yesterday, as you mentioned. Were there any big changes to that bill during the discussion?
No, there were some additional amendments that were offered and then subsequently withdrawn. The only amendment that ended up getting adopted was that one from Senator Grassley, which just makes a few technical changes to make it more similar to the version that passed the House of Representatives. But it is still a bill that is duplicative. It's a solution in search of a problem, and it would ultimately result in less effective enforcement of the Packers and Stockyards Act in the form that it's currently marked up in.
Tanner, that is a big point. Why would this bill reduce in less enforcement of the PSA?
Well, you have two different agencies at USDA, should this bill get passed, that are charged with doing the exact same thing. The Packers and Stockyards Division, which is an existing agency of USDA, it's been around for over 100 years in some form or fashion, and they enforce the act in its entirety, including competition matters and including among meat packers, which are regulated entities under the Packers and Stockyards Act. If we create this brand new office and charge them with doing the exact same thing, we're creating these blurred jurisdictional lines that's just going to set up confrontation between Packers and Stockyards and the Special Investigator's Office over who actually has jurisdiction over the matter. And those conflicts will take time to resolve. And then in addition to that, this bill continues to be unfunded. which means that they are going to have to steal resources away from other critical programs at AMS, like the Packers and Stockyards Division, in order to have the necessary resources to execute that mission of that Special Investigator's Office. So it'll result in less effective enforcement between those jurisdictional battles, and then even from a resources perspective, because we know that the Packers and Stockyards Division hasn't received a substantial budget increase in over a decade, and they are, by their own estimates, about 52% underfunded and 40% understaffed.
Okay. Yeah, that would create some trade-offs in enforcement, I think it's fair to say. Tanner, I did want to ask you about that amendment introduced by Grassley. You mentioned it would conform the Senate bill to the House bill. He also added language that the investigator would need to be a senior career employee at USDA. What's the thinking behind that phrase? How does that change the enforcement or the anything with this bill?
Well, unfortunately, that particular amendment did not alleviate any of the livestock industry's, NCBA included, concern with the underlying legislation. That amendment specifically mirrors one that was offered by Congressman Costa in the House markup. And the logic there is that it would create this position as a senior career as opposed to someone who is politically appointed and reports to the secretary in a political context. As a career position, the idea is that that person would be a little bit more established. They would maintain that position through changes in administration or changes in the White House, and they would be less inclined to follow the winds or the political agendas of whoever happens to be the Secretary of Agriculture at the time. But again, that doesn't alleviate some of the underlying concerns we have elsewhere.
Absolutely. Tanner, this bill you mentioned has already passed the House. It's now out of the Senate Ag Committee. Do you think it's going to make it to the floor of the Senate before they head to recess?
You know, a lot of things are going to need to come together in order for either of these two bills to get their time on the Senate floor. You know, the Senate just announced that they have that bipartisan gun package that they're working on. There's a lot of other issues that need to come before the full Senate. And of course, that 60-vote threshold is going to be difficult to achieve on both of these pieces of legislation because of that bipartisan opposition once you get off the committee. What I imagine will probably happen is if they're going to move it at all, it will need to get packaged together with some other legislation that is viewed as must-have and will ultimately need to get moved before they all go home for the midterm.
All right. We'll keep an eye on bills heading to the Senate floor. Tanner Bramer of NCBA, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks again, Mike.
And folks, stick around. We're going to turn our focus to another type of protein production in this country, aquaculture, when AOA returns.
Hi, this is Mike Pearson. You're listening to AOA, Agriculture of America. Don't go away. More AOA coming right up.
Corn is native to the American continents and was unknown to the rest of humanity until Columbus arrived in the New World in the 15th century. It took less than 100 years after Columbus's discovery for corn to be introduced to farmers in Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Pacific Islands. After wheat and rice, corn is the third most cultivated crop in the world. The four nations that purchase the most corn from the United States are Mexico and Colombia, who use it as a food ingredient, and Japan and South Korea, who buy it mainly for animal feed. Around 1/3 of the corn grown in the United States is eaten by livestock, another third is used in the production of ethanol fuel, and the rest is either consumed by humans, export to other nations, or used industrially. Now that sweet corn, that's the variety that most Americans grill or boil for cookouts or just eat straight out of a can with a spoon, accounts for just 1% of all corn grown in the United States. These farm facts brought to you by the American Ag Network.
You're listening to AOA for the American Ag Network. I'm Jesse Allen reporting. Well, as we take a look here at the market trade working through our mid-morning, we continue to see heavy pressure in the grains as more recession fears are weighing on the market trade here as we get into this Thursday. U.S. equities markets are regaining a bit of ground, though, despite the recession talk. The Dow Jones up slightly here this morning. Crude oil is kind of oscillating around the unchanged mark. It's kind of interesting to watch as we've really just been generally sliding from highs for more than 2 weeks now with the trade fearing a recession resulting from the Federal Reserve's policies, but we're still seeing crude oil above $100 a barrel, although it is well off the highs around that 120, 125 mark. Now, the grain and oil seeds clearly pointing in the downward direction as the week progresses, with volume strengthening to support the move as well, and forecasts more varied going forward, but generally avoiding the hot and dry conditions that have stressed crops to this point. The trade has another week to wait until the June 30th stocks and acreage reports, looking at those improving forecasts in the meantime, while wheat weighed by harvest pressure from the U.S. plains, and really the trade is tired of all the talk from major powers about getting grain out of Ukraine as the war drags on there. And we've seen Russia bomb a few more grain terminals here yesterday in Ukraine. Taking a look at numbers, July corn down 19 and a quarter, 748 and 3/4. December down 30 and 3/4, 663. July beans 47 and a quarter lower, 1605 and a half. November down 45, 1431 and a half. Bean meal, bean oil down hard. Chicago wheat July down 24, 952 and a half. July KC wheat down 24 and a half, 1014 and 3/4. July spring wheat down 17 and a quarter, 1088 and 3/4. Cattle are higher. June live cattle up 55, 136.67. August feeders up 252, 175.67. July hogs down 182, 110.02. This is AOA. I'm Jesse Allen.
How many acres are you keeping an eye on? Another pair of eyes could be very helpful in protecting your ROI, especially ones that are highly trained. And that's what you'll get with an FS crop specialist. They can spot issues you might not even know you have using the latest technology, including thermal, drone, and NDVI eye imaging. Then they can get an early treatment plan started. Contact your local FS crop specialist to learn more about our crop scouting services. It's one more way FS is bringing you what's next.
This is Pastor Paul Stroop, Clinton Presbyterian Church. Allow me to lead us in a word of prayer. Oh God, we pray for all those impacted during this pandemic. Remind us what it means to live in community and help us to have concern for others above ourselves. During these challenging times, guide us to spread hope and not fear, to find unity, not division. Give us the courage, the strength, and an unwavering trust in you. In your name we pray. Amen.
This is Mike Pearson. Thanks for listening to Agriculture of America. Join me Monday through Friday for the latest farm and agriculture news from around the world.
Keeping America's farmers and ranchers informed on AOA. Now back to Mike Pearson.
Well, folks, thanks so much for making AOA a part of your day today. We're going to talk next about a different aspect of American agriculture. Of course, we are a huge industry encompassing not just the row crops we're used to here in the Corn Belt, but we've got forestry, we've got fisheries, we've got all of these things that come together. And one of the things we talk about a lot with regard to American agriculture in particular is that we are an export-driven industry, whether it's corn, beans, dairy, you name it. The American producer does such a great job that we have to have an export market to sell into. However, there are a few exceptions for American food products where we do import the majority of that product, and one of those areas is seafood. We have a massive seafood trade deficit with the rest of the world, and maybe it's time to ramp up production of fish here in this country. That's the thesis behind Nicholas Sullivan's new book, The Blue Revolution, Hunting, Harvesting, and Farming Seafood in the Information Age. Nicholas is a senior fellow at the Fletcher Maritime Studies Program and a senior fellow at the Council for Emerging Market Enterprises at Tufts University. Nick, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's start by defining what we're talking about here in aquaculture in Iowa. I'm very familiar with some folks discussing shrimp or perhaps tilapia raising on the land, but the industry is much bigger than that, isn't it?
Well, globally, for sure, it is. Aquaculture is the fastest growing form of food production in the world. And the U.S. has a very, very small share of that market. I think maybe 1% of the global market. So the global market is about 60% freshwater and about 40% marine, seawater. And what I focus on in the book is the marine or mariculture, marine aquaculture. The U.S. has a huge trade deficit, $17 billion. And interestingly enough, I was just looking at the 1980 National Aquaculture Bill Act, which was written, among other things, to reduce the U.S. seafood trade deficit. So here we are, 40 some years later, and I don't know what it was then, but certainly it's bigger now than it was then.
And so we've got this law in place, as you mentioned. It's been there for 42, 44 years now almost. We have not seen this industry thrive in the way that you would expect, given the prices and the demand from consumers. Nick, what is it that has kept maritime aquaculture from performing to its full potential?
Well, one thing is that Americans, the majority of the seafood that Americans eat is farmed shrimp and farmed salmon and canned tuna, all from the other side of the world. So the farmed shrimp and farmed salmon are just huge favorites of American people. The other interesting thing about aquaculture is that globally, at least for mariculture, marine aquaculture, 70% of it is shellfish and kelp. People always think about, finfish and salmon, but it's shellfish and kelp, and that is true in the U.S. If you look at the East Coast in particular, tons of particularly oyster, some mussel farms, and kelp. So, the push is to drive, well, two things. One is driving finfish production onto land. There are a lot of land-based farms now starting. Or to drive it offshore into deeper, colder water with stronger currents. Because, there was a lot of pushback against the Norwegian salmon farming in the 90s because of the degradation of the seafloor and the disease spread and so forth. So the industry has moved in both directions.
Okay, going in both directions. And I think of the prices being paid at the store for those finfish in particular. And I'm wondering, is the reason the industry isn't thriving because of a patchwork of regulation? You mentioned that 1980 National Aquaculture Act. Have there been any other modernizations of the oversight for aquaculture or mariculture?
No, there hasn't really. Ted Stevens, who was part of the Magnuson-Stevens Act regulating marine fisheries starting in 1976, he introduced a bill in Congress in 2005 for aquaculture. That failed. It failed in 2007, 2009, 2011. And so the bill now, the Aqua Act now, was introduced in 2018. So it has been going for 4 years. So no, there's been no legislation passed to regulate aquaculture since 1980.
So I'm curious then about this Aqua Act, the Advancing the Quality and Understanding of American Aquaculture that, as you mentioned, it's been floating out there since 2018. What does this act try to do to make that industry, bring it up to speed, I suppose?
Well, the one thing is, so now there are so many federal agencies involved in permitting, and that's probably always going to be the case. I mean, we got the Department of Agriculture, which is the lead agency, Department of Commerce, which does, offshore, Army Corps of Engineers, Fish and Wildlife, Science and Technology. So there's a lot of agencies involved. This bill in particular tries to establish the Department of Commerce or NOAA Fisheries as the lead agency in permitting marine aquaculture. Right now,
so basically, this would make this new agent, well, NOAA Fisheries or the Department of Commerce would become a one-stop shop for folks beginning that permitting process?
Well, I don't think it's a one-stop shop because I said there still will be a lot of federal agencies involved. There's a lot of, when you're talking about the ocean, of course, there's a lot of spatial planning in terms of navigation channels, other fisheries like lobstermen, whale migration, shipping lanes, and so forth. So there's a lot of agencies that have to be involved. But it would establish Department of Commerce and NOAA as the lead agency. And right now, USDA.
And I understand, Nicholas, there's also this interaction between the states and the federal agencies when it comes to oversight. How do those rules and laws work for these operations that might be interested in going offshore?
Right. Good point. I mean, so as far as the states regulate, state waters are up to 3 miles offshore. Each state manages up to 3 miles offshore, and they are kind of the driver for permitting in their waters. From between 3 miles and 200 miles, which is the exclusive territorial limit of the U.S., is federal water, and that is, under the aegis of federal agencies. So, there's most of the aquaculture in the U.S. now is in state waters. There's almost none in federal waters. And that's really what this bill is trying to help promote, to make it easier and more efficient to get permitting for offshore aquaculture.
Gotcha. As they push farther off and into deeper water, naturally, they might need to be more than 3 miles offshore. Is that the thinking?
That's the thinking, correct. Yeah. And of course, it's controversial, as you might imagine. And, a lot of people say, we don't want industrial fish farms. We don't want this. We don't want that. And, but for the moment, we've got nothing. So that's really, I think, what is the driver behind this bill, is to say, we need a national plan, a strategy. Otherwise, our seafood deficit is going to keep increasing. And, interestingly enough, the U.S. has got the second most ocean territory in the world after France. If you take all its territories and continental land 200 miles out, it's got tons of ocean territory. So we should have a bigger aquaculture footprint in the world.
Yeah, I think that's the juxtaposition that surprised me most, is we have a tremendous amount of ocean territory, and yet we are the world's #1 importer of fish. And I'm curious, you mentioned there the pushback to these bills in the past, the idea of industrialized fish farming. Is that sort of environmental concern the chief reason these bills haven't moved farther down the line?
I think so. That's one. The other is, of course, wild capture fishermen have a strong lobby, and they always say this is just going to compete with us. So that's part of it. But I'd say the environmental lobby is probably the strongest. And, there's good reason for it. I mean, there was a salmon farm in off state of Washington where there was a huge of Atlantic salmon grown in the Pacific, and there was a huge escapement 3-4 years ago. And so there is cause for concern. Catalina Island had off the coast of LA had an offshore farm, mostly mussels, I believe. And they had all kinds of boats get caught up in their ropes and flipped, and someone was killed. So there are definitely issues to be aware of. But
all right,
the positive potential is.
Yeah, I was going to say there's lots to come in this issue. Nick, before we let you go, where can folks find your book?
Well, it's in bookstores. It's on Amazon. The publisher is Island Press. You can get it through their website. And The Blue Revolution. And it's half wild capture and half aquaculture.
Covering the full gamut, folks. That's Nick Sullivan, the author of The Blue Revolution, Hunting, Harvesting, and Farming Seafood in the Information Age. Nick, thanks for joining us today. And folks, stick around. We'll be talking to Mike Steenhoek of the Soy Transportation Coalition when we return.
Hi, this is Mike Pearson. You're listening to AOA, Agriculture of America. Don't go away. More AOA coming right up.
Warner Hospital and Health Services in Clinton uses the latest technology for positive patient outcomes with a new state-of-the-art CT machine next to our ER. CEO Paul Scarron asking you to find out more by clicking our icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
When it comes to fire and water restoration, ServPro of Piatt DeWitt counties is the leader in cleaning, restoration, and construction. Find out all the services they provide by clicking their icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
When did elections become a game? Like hide and seek for grown-ups. Tricky grown-ups. Look at Rodney Davis. Do you ever hear Davis talk about his votes to send your tax dollars to Planned Parenthood? True. Davis voted for taxpayer funding of Planned Parenthood. 4 times. 4 times Davis voted for taxpayer funding of Planned Parenthood, the biggest abortion provider in the country. You won't find that on his campaign website. See? Hide and seek. There's more. Davis once bragged, quote, "I can't wait to work with Nancy Pelosi." And then Davis voted with Pelosi 1,077 times. Rodney Davis. You know his game. Davis talks like a Republican here and votes like a Democrat in Washington. Paid for by Conservative Outsider PAC, copac.us, and not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. Conservative Outsider PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
The WHOW Morning Show is now video streamed live on the WHOW WEZC DeWittDailyNews.com Facebook page and on the new WHOW TV YouTube channel. Watch Morning Show host Seth Lawrence interview guests live, as well as watch archived video podcasts of any interview you missed. Whether on Facebook or YouTube, we're providing 2 more ways that Central Illinois' local news station, WHOW, delivers compelling content for you.
Has Parkinson's. You have Parkinson's. The Parkinson's Foundation knows that the disease doesn't just affect the diagnosed. It affects everyone who supports and helps care for them.
If you or someone you know is living with Parkinson's, a neurological disease that affects movement, we understand that it can be difficult to know where to find help.
If you have questions, the Parkinson's Foundation has answers. Answers for everyone in the fight.
We can help you understand the disease,
help you find expert care and local support,
give you tips for living a better life,
and share the latest research.
Find your answers and join us in the fight against Parkinson's.
To learn more, please go to parkinson.org.
Or call 1-800-473-4636.
That's 1-800-473-4636. The Parkinson's Foundation. Better lives together.
Soil, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Soil Ship Enterprise to explore soil life, to boldly grow where cover crops have never grown before. Farmer's Log, soil date 31655.4. We've come across some strange but incredibly helpful life forms. We didn't have to travel far to find them, but these organisms have proven invaluable on our trip through the solar system. They help feed us by nourishing and protecting our crops. They've built our soil structure to make it more resilient to the harsh weather we encounter. Our sensors indicate they're even helping us store carbon that plants take out of the atmosphere and put it back into the soil. Guess you can say our living and life-giving soil is the best thing to cling on to. Sorry, that's soil fleet humor. Visit your local USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service office today and learn more about the basics and benefits of soil health. This message brought to you by USDA and this radio station.
Join us every Tuesday for Around the Table, brought to you by CHS, where we take a close look at the benefits of cooperative ownership. Each week, we'll host a new guest and discuss how you can get the most from working with your local cooperative. And we'll learn why farmers and ranchers just like you choose cooperatives to help them persevere and prosper. Tune in each Tuesday or visit cooperativeownership.com to learn more.
Chris Domine is a husband, father, an athlete, even an Ironman. But 10 years ago, Chris's kidneys were failing.
The doctor said, if you don't get a kidney transplant, you are going to die.
Chris received a second chance, made possible by an organ donor.
Your well-being changes from loss of hope to better times ahead.
What could you make possible as an organ, eye, and tissue donor? Leave behind the gift of life. Go to organdonor.gov. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
You're listening to AOA, Agriculture of America. This is Mike Pearson, and you can rely on us for the latest farm and ranch news from around the world.
Keeping America's farmers and ranchers informed on AOA. Now back to Mike Pearson.
Well, folks, if you've no doubtedly heard, yesterday President Joe Biden went before Congress and he called on them to remove or suspend, I should say, the federal gasoline and diesel taxes for the next 90 days. Now, obviously, a move like this is going to have impact. It's going to have immediate impacts on the consumer. And I was wondering, what would this drop in fuel taxes mean for the American farmer? But then, of course, there's a longer term impact. What would eliminating the federal fuel tax do for infrastructure funding down the line? Well, one person tracks both of these issues, and that's Mike Steenhoek, the executive director of the Soy Transportation Coalition. He was running the calculator yesterday, figuring out how this could impact farmers in the short term. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Hey, it's good to be with you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Let's say that Congress moves forward and repeals the gas and diesel tax on the federal level for the next 90 days. Mike, what's that going to mean for farmers who are out there running trucks, burning that diesel every day?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge, first of all, is to define what a typical farmer is, because obviously the size of the operation, the productivity of the land, how far you drive to get to your delivery location, if you have different semi-weight limit allowances in state A versus state B, all these things really need to be taken into consideration. But if you kind of take just an average, farmer that, say farms over 1,000 acres, say 1,000 acres, 600 acres of corn, 400 acres of soybeans, with kind of typical yields. And let's say you drive 25 miles to get to your delivery location. Obviously, some it's shorter, some it's longer. But what you're looking at is about 95 cents a day if the federal diesel tax is suspended. So you're a farmer with that kind of profile, you spend 95 cents a day in the federal diesel taxes. Obviously not for fuel total, that's exorbitantly more than that, but in the terms of the federal diesel tax, which is 24.4 cents per gallon of diesel fuel. Now, if states followed President Biden's suggestion of suspending their state fuel taxes on diesel fuel, if you suspend both the federal diesel tax and the state diesel tax average throughout the country, a farmer would save $2.51 a day by not having to pay that both federal and state diesel taxes. And again, it depends on your operation and what state you live in, but that's roughly what kind of savings that would involve.
All right. So we're talking about this tax holiday, maybe putting an extra nearly $1 in our pocket per day if the feds go through with this. And of course, more than if the states follow along, as you mentioned, Mike. I'm curious that's not a huge savings for a lot of folks, particularly given the amount of diesel that farmers are burning through. So I'm curious, Mike, look out long term. What would this holiday do for infrastructure funding? Obviously, we've got to get our roads and bridges back up to snuff across rural America. I can't imagine this would be helpful towards that end.
Yeah, and that's the real big concern now. That the president did suggest that Congress find a way to provide the funding that the highway trust fund or the individual state trust funds use to maintain and improve infrastructure. So there's been this suggestion. Now we know that that'll either result in some kind of fee or tax increase on one end, but more likely it'll just involve some degree of additional, incurring additional debt to pay for that. And the concern that I do have is in order to maintain and improve infrastructure well and do it efficiently and economically, it requires a lot of planning. And for you to do that effective planning, you have to have a predictable and reliable funding source. And if all of a sudden, and this is coming from me, who's a fiscal conservative, what bothers me is if you make the fuel tax more of a political football, and it might be suspended for a period of time and then reinstituted and suspended again, that results in less predictable, less reliable funding for our infrastructure, which is very expensive and requires a lot of planning. And it's one of the most effective ways of escalating the cost of an infrastructure project is to have your funding mechanism be unreliable and unpredictable. So that is a concern that I have. Look, we all get it that there's a lot of sticker shock when you're filling up your car or your truck with whether gasoline or diesel fuel. That is a reality, and we need to explore every opportunity to address that. So, I certainly encourage this brainstorming that's happening right now, but I think we would be wise to understand that there would be some consequences to this, and it may not be acceptable to us if we've got this priority, which most Americans do, to have a well-maintained, well-capitalized, efficient multimodal transportation system.
Absolutely. And Mike, we could see Congress replenish the Highway Trust Fund at the federal level. If the states were to follow through and repeal their gas taxes, would that have a bigger impact on infrastructure in those geographies?
Yeah, the federal fuel tax, which is 18.4 cents per gallon for gasoline, 24.4 cents for diesel fuel, and that's a 6 cents per gallon. So whether gasoline is $2 a gallon or $4 a gallon, it's that 6 cents per gallon. That hasn't changed since 1993. Now, a lot of states, particularly over the last 7-8 years, they've increased their state fuel taxes. So the states have a higher fuel tax than what's instituted at the federal level. So yes, if a state were to suspend their state fuel tax, that would obviously have more of an impact on someone's bottom line. But again, a lot of the states, that's going to be a real challenge for them, because a lot of states, their legislatures aren't currently in session. Now, some states have year-round legislatures. Most states do not. And so how a legislature can come together in a short period of time and attend to that's a real big question mark.
Yeah, they are not known for moving quickly, broadly speaking, in the legislatures. Folks, we've been talking about this issue with Mike Steenhoek, the executive director of the Soy Transportation Coalition. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, it's good to be with you, Mike.
And folks, tune in tomorrow. We're going to talk engine manufacturing in this country going forward. We'll see you then for more AOA.
This is Mike Pearson. Thanks for listening to Agriculture of America. Join me Monday through Friday for the latest farm and agriculture news from around the world.
Don't you wish your life came with a warning app?
Stop. That dog does not want to be petted.
A heads up before something bad happens.
You should not send that text.
Uh-oh. Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes, you can reverse prediabetes and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. To learn your risk, take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
I drive my bus in a busy city. That's why road safety is so important to me. I know that I must slow down and be extra careful when I make a wide turn. Buses need more room than cars. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, remember to give buses plenty of time and space to finish turning before driving ahead. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
Here's a supply chain update from your Clinton Save-A-Lot. Owner Dave Jackson here. Workers in retail and restaurants today are doing the best they can under very trying circumstances. That situation is no different here at your Clinton Save-A-Lot. It's been a team effort to keep our shelves stocked with the freshest meat, produce, and items you purchase every day. While many stores have cut hours and services, your Clinton Save-A-Lot has maintained our staffing level and regular hours thanks to my fantastic team of employees. Your Clinton Save-A-Lot appreciates your business, and we hope to see you soon.
SIU Center for Family Medicine inside the Logan County Health Department at 109 3rd Street in Lincoln provides complete family health care services to insured, underinsured, or uninsured. SIU Medicine offers a medicated assistance recovery clinic. The MAR Clinic assists those addicted to opioids. This clinic supports and treats people with the help they need. Complete dental services are available. Veteran assistance and financial aid are both available. Call SIU Center for Family Medicine in Lincoln for your appointment, 217-735-2317, or click their icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
The Big 1520 WHOW Clinton, 92.3 FM W222 BG Clinton, 106.5 FM W293 DJ Normal Bloomington.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm John Scott. The Supreme Court today ruled Americans have a right to carry guns in public, a major expansion of gun rights. Bernie Bennett with details.
The court struck down a New York gun law in a ruling that is expected to directly impact half a dozen other populous states.
The justice's 6-3 decision is expected to allow more people to legally carry guns on the streets of the nation's largest cities, including New York, Los Angeles, and Boston. It's the High Court's first major gun decision in more than a decade. Justice Clarence Thomas wrote for the majority that the Constitution protects, quote, an individual's right to carry a handgun for self-defense outside the home. The court's 3 liberals in dissent accuse the conservative majority of failing to consider the, quote, potentially deadly consequences of its decision. Bernie Bennett in Washington.
Also at townhall.com, President Biden is seeking a federal gas tax suspension, but his past efforts to lower the cost of gasoline have had little impact.
Some of the president's previous actions include the release of oil from the U.S. Strategic Reserve and greater ethanol blending this summer. But those efforts have done little to produce savings at the pump. And there's also a risk that not all savings from a gas tax holiday would be passed along to the public.
White House correspondent Greg Cluxton. Meanwhile, in an AP interview, Moody's Analytics chief economist Mark Zandi says he doesn't expect Congress to suspend federal gasoline and diesel taxes for 3 months.
It has to go through Congress, agreed to by Republicans, and into legislation signed by the president. That's a pretty heavy lift, particularly in this political environment. So it's worthy of conversation and considering. But at the end of the day, I think the probability of this actually happening is much less than even.
And if the gas tax was dumped, a driver would save about $2.76 for a 15-gallon fill-up. More on these stories at townhall.com.
I've always been kind of cynical towards advertising, which I know doesn't make much sense considering I'm currently recording a commercial. It's all the fluffy words that make us cynical, right? A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a blue light special, but only, of course, if you call right now. It all kind of makes me nauseous, and yet here I am about to say that right now actually might be a once-in-a-lifetime moment for some of us, and that is the opportunity of a cash-out refinance. Arguably never has there been a moment in time like the last few years where home values have jumped at crazy historical levels, leaving all this extra money sitting inside our homes. A cash-out refinance lets you put that extra money in your pocket to use for life. If you'd like to see your options, we are United Faith Mortgage.
United Faith Mortgage is a DBA of United Mortgage Corp. 25 Melville Park Road, Melville, New York. Licensed mortgage banker. For all licensing information, go to NMLSConsumerAccess.org. Corporate NMLS number 1330. Equal housing lender. Licensed in Alaska, Hawaii, Georgia, North Dakota, South Dakota, or Utah.
EU leaders are preparing to grant Ukraine candidate status to join the 27-nation bloc, a first step in a long journey toward full membership that could take years to achieve.
Making the war-torn nation a contender now seems to be a done deal after leaders were initially divided on how fast they could move to embrace the bid launched only a few days after Russia launched its invasion on February 24. According to several EU diplomats, Ukraine will receive the unanimous approval that's required for the launch of discussions. Leaders of France, Germany, Italy, and Romania have recently visited the country and vowed to back its candidacy. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
Authorities say it will take weeks or months